purpose is to go over all things regarding the listing, okay? So we're going to go over all the listing paperwork first. Then we're going to go over listing packet, and we're going to go over listing presentation. We're not going to go over a bunch of things regarding the buying side in particular, but the information I think you ought to give a seller when you're taking a listing and preparing for the listing to go live. So that's really the premise of what we're talking about today. On the 5th or whatever, we're going to do all things regarding buyers. Anything a buyer needs to know in order to buy a house. And that's the contracts and inspections and how to read the seller's disclosure and some of those things again or whatever. I'm going to try and just hit the highlights because this can be a little overwhelming if we're not careful. But I don't want to go past anything if you don't have good clarity. So I'm happy to linger on a particular paragraph as long as we need to. But I'm not going to read to you. But I'm going to try and answer your questions. So we have a group of paperwork. Hopefully you have this paperwork. We're going to go in this order. Marianne, do you get into them in that order?
Yeah.
And we're going to start with the listing agreement. Listings belong to the broker. So when you go on a listing agreement, you're going on an agreement between the broker, myself, and that individual. Okay? All listings belong to the broker. Okay? It is my 100% philosophy that these listings belong back to you, and I would never keep a listing from any agent that didn't want to be at Boulevard Realty. So you're under absolutely no fear that I'm going to take your listing or not give you your listing. If you ever leave and go on your own or go to work at Mark Attorney, you're going to take your listing with you forever. That same philosophy, the number one thing I want you to hear today, and I wish we could write everywhere, is that I only want to do business with people that are fair and ethical and that believe 100% in our service and in our value. And when they no longer feel that they appreciate our service and our value, I no longer want to do business with them, which means I no longer want to have that listing. When someone doesn't want to pay us for something, they're not going to pay us for something. I am never going to use any agreement to get somebody to pay us for something when they don't believe that we earn it. So listen exactly what I'm saying. You can have a listing for a year. You can get under contract 45 days ago. We can go through the option period and the appraisal and the inspections and the walkthrough, and the seller says, look, your agent was not worth what I'm paying for them. We're not going to collect any money from you. We're not going to collect any money from you. We want to do business with people who value our service and what it is that we do, okay? So when there's a conflict, I'm going to yield to the side of that seller, say, okay, don't pay us. I can't get them out of paying the cooperating broker because we've already entered into that agreement. Now, in 21 years, I've never really had this happen, so it's not like we're going to have a lot of these experiences, because along the way, it usually fails much sooner than that. So I only want to do business with people who are ethical and fair. They want to screw a buyer. They want to screw another agent. They want to screw the next door neighbor. I don't want to do business with them. I don't want my sign in the yard. I don't want to represent them. I don't want to do that. I think the world's too small. It'll make me want to get out of real estate. I want to do business with people who think we are great, that we earned every dime, and that want to continue to use us in the future and refer us to all of their friends and family. I think that's what we'll go focus on, okay? So this listing agreement is a promulgated form. We could very easily have our own form, and I've thought many times I should probably go and do so, because you're going to hear today many instances that I don't necessarily even agree with this form. This form is between me and the seller, and we can edit this form all we want to, okay? And so I'm going to go over things that I think, if I were a seller, that I would want edited. Now, I'm not going to say take the edited form to them, but I'm just saying we can edit the form. If they say something along the way, I'm probably going to agree with it. They scratch it out, initial it, we can initial it, you can initial it for me, and we can move on down the road, okay? So, we're going to go over this one. The seller. I need for you to fill out the information on the seller so that Marianne can find them. That's what we really need. Who are they? Is it three brothers? Is it a man and a man? Is it a man and his daughter? Just give us who they are and give us their email address. The broker is us. You can sign on behalf of the broker. We're not going to enter into multiple agreements where they list with other people. So we have an exclusive relationship when we list a house. So that sign there, the sentence there that says we're the sole and exclusive real estate agent, we're going to do that. We're not going to let them list with 4 different people over there. This form is to give us clarity so that the seller knows what they're getting themselves into. Okay? Your responsibility is to explain this form so that they have a very good understanding so that they're not surprised along the way. Okay? We don't want any surprises. So I generally drop off my listing agreement in my packet before I go on a listing agreement. We're going to talk about that procedure so that they have time to review it. And then I go over the highlights with them, usually on my second meeting, not my first meeting. But, so give them the listing agreement in advance, let them mark it up and have their questions ready for you when you're ready to go over the listing agreement. So first time, you're probably just talking to them about meet at the house, visit the house. We're going to talk about all that sort of thing. The second time you meet with them, that's when you generally want to go over the highlights of this listing agreement. Okay? So you need to discuss when you're going through with them what is included in their listing that they're selling, things that are permanently fixed and things. So it's clear in the improvement section when it talks about mounts and brackets for televisions and speakers that it didn't mention televisions and speakers, right? So we have pretty good clarity and we're pretty knowledgeable that when we go through the deal, say when you're selling your house, and it's got this TV right here. The TV is excluded in our listing agreement, but the mount on the wall is included. Do you intend to leave the mount, and do you intend to leave the TV or not? Is it overly important to you? And if it's because when people see the TV, they're going to ask for the TV, okay? And if you want to take the TV and the mount, and we do the walkthrough right before closing, and they see a hole in the wall where the mount is, you're going to get the opportunity to fix, tape, float, texture, and repaint where the mount was. So it's more trouble to remove the mount than it is to pay $75 for a new mount. But are you clear about what you're going to do here? Your listing agreement says you're going to leave the mount, you're going to take the TV. The buyer's going to ask you for the TV, and what am I going to say about it? And if you're clearly going to take the TV because your world depends upon it, then we just need to make it clear that the seller intends to take his TVs with him. Intend to take the mounts. I need to know right up front, and you need to be prepared to address the issue when the mounts are removed. Curtains and rods are about the same way. The rod is included, and curtains now are definitely included as a fixture and an improvement. If you intend to take the curtains, we need to clearly exclude the curtains. So part of the point of our listing agreement is to get clarity what you're selling and what you're taking with you. You're taking grandma's rose bush from the backyard, but you brought it from Tennessee after the funeral. I need to know, I've had this happen to me many times. I need to know that you intend to pick up the rose bush and take it with you. Okay? If you have these beautiful potted plants all around your swimming pool over there, the potted plant is excluded. But what happens generally, I'm just talking how I've explained to yourself, generally happens that people take the beautiful pots and they leave the ugly pots. And when you take the beautiful pots and then they do the walkthrough before closing and you've left the ugly ones, they're going to want you to come get the ugly ones also. Invariably, that's what happens. So what pots do you intend to leave? What pots do you intend to take? They're excluded in our agreement, but what we're really trying to achieve here is great clarity when we get under contract or if we have a potential buyer there.
Quick question, does anyone drive a Nissan Quest? No? The lights are on? Okay. All right.
Where does it say that, so it says all equipment and appliances, so.
Permanently affixed.
What makes the stove permanently affixed?
Because you can't get a conventional mortgage without a range. So in our industry, you have to have it subject to an appraisal, and then you can't get a conventional loan without a range.
So if it's a cash offer,
could you exclude the range?
We need to write in a not realty addendum that says stove then.
No, stove is considered a permanently affixed, because it is, in our industry, it's considered a fixture. You have to have that in order to use your house. You have to have an air conditioning unit, you have to have a water heater, you have a stove in order. You don't have to have everything else. You don't have to have a dishwasher, because you can wash dishes in a sink. You have to have a range in order for your house to be functional. So the range is considered a permanently attached fixture. Take it with this.
Isn't a dishwasher kind of that way?
It is permanently attached. I mean, you're saying, but some houses don't even have to have a dishwasher. You can build a house without a dishwasher. You can't operate a house without a range.
But they have this awesome stove they want to have as an exclusion.
You can't exclude it.
Will their buyer be able to get a loan still on it?
No. You're going to get the chance to give them some allowance for another range. If there's no range there, they're not going to be able to get a conventional mortgage.
But if the range is there when they do.
But if they're smart enough to figure, the lender's smart enough to read that the range is going to be gone, they're going to require a range to be in there. They don't want to foreclose on a house with the range, and they have to put back the range. That's the way they look at it.
Why isn't it the same with the refrigerator?
Because most people have their own refrigeration. It's just, now if it's got a box around it, it is a permanent fixture or whatever, but it just hasn't been the industry standard to leave a refrigerator if it's not a built-in.
Is that
Because they're very personal.
a requirement, like if the box, if there's like a gap, is it no longer considered?
No, still considered built-in.
It's still considered.
It was built for that hole.
Is it always a good practice if you're representing the buyer to put it on the realty?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want clarity about what's excluded, and we're going to, so if they intend to take the refrigerator, even though it's naturally excluded, if it's not built around, then I would just make it clear that you're taking the refrigerator, the washer, the dryer, the curtains in the little girl's bedroom, and whatever it is that they have. I would make it clear. I don't own any clickers. I programmed my garage door opener. I didn't get a clicker when I bought the house, and I don't intend to buy it. I will tell you, the number one thing I buy on the day of closing are clickers to garages. I write $25 checks and go and buy clickers all the time, because we go to sell a house and there's not a clicker, and the seller signed at 9 a.m. and the buyer went to sign at 1 o'clock, and they went over there and there's not a clicker, and they buy a house and they can't get in their garage door. And I send Mario over to the store, and he buys 2 universal remotes, and we go over there and program it for it. We do it every week. We do it every week. You'd be surprised how many times it's come up. If we would just be clear that we don't own any clickers, and that you need to come on over while the seller was there and program your own car with, with the seller there, it'd just be easier. But clickers are a big deal. Now it's easy to fix because it's $25, and I never go ask the agent for it. I just pay for the clickers and move on down the road. It's the cost of doing business. These are good questions. The television antennas don't get me as much as the satellite dishes, where you have some satellite dish and it's leased by Dish Network or whatever, and you're moving to your new house, you're going to take your satellite dish with you from Harvard Street over to White Oak Street. So we need to make it clear, and most people who buy the house don't want an antenna and they don't want your dish. They want you to remove it and fix the roof with the new shingles, because you penetrated the roof to adhere the dish and the satellite. So we need clarity what you're doing there. Same with the outdoor cooking equipment. Of course, if you have a summer kitchen and it's a built-in range, it's one thing. But if you just have the grill over there and it's connected by the gas line, it's the next thing that probably gets us into some fight the day of closing. Now, we're all pretty smart. We would all say that that was not permanently fixed, but the buyer assumed, because it had gas connected to it, that he was going to take it. So let's just tell them right up front what they're getting and what they're not getting. And let's make it clear on the MLS what we're including, not just the things that are clear to us. They should be clear to everyone else. What you're getting and what you're not getting. I would put it on the MLS. We're going to ask you to put it on your showing instructions from this point forward. We're going to make it very clear in the contracts what's excluded. Even the washers and dryers, which are naturally excluded, I would write them in there so that we have clarity, code clarity. Yes?
Just to reference back to the range and other possible issues about exclusions, is that they could remove the range before you start showing the listing and replace it with another range.
Sure they could. Yeah, they're gonna take it.
Thing like grandmother's mirror.
It happens all the time with the washers and dryers too. They bought a house, they got a stupid washer and dryer, they just threw it in the garage over here. And they intend to take their good one and put the one that they got that haven't even been tested in 3 years and put that back in there. And it never works, you know that, right? I mean, it's invariably my next problem. Yes.
What is a mirror? And I'm not talking about one over the sink, consider.
A bathroom mirror in a bathroom above a sink, it should be noted, is going to stay with the house unless it's excluded. A mirror in a hallway, or a mirror that's not permanently attached. So the permanently attached mirror in the closet that's glued to the wall, or the bedroom closet door, or the ceiling, or wherever they might have their mirror, that infatuation, those are staying if they're permanently fixed. And the ones on a little hook are still going to stay in a bathroom, even though it's not permanently attached. It's assumed that it's a fixture that goes with the bathroom unless it's excluded. So the one in the entry that has the little mirror, the 3 places for the keys or whatever, I'm dating myself in 1978, those things can go away. The powder bath mirror that's on a nail is going to stay there unless you exclude it. Okay? Okay. Keys, clickers, keys to the mailbox, keys to the side gate over there, keys to the padlock on the breaker box, keys to the gate to the alley. These are the things that get us all the time. I don't really have a key, can't find the key. Pack the key and move it to Michigan. So I end up sending Mario, we cut that lock, we buy a new lock, we hand them their new lock with their new keys all the time. I mean, in my world, if I don't save $100 for every closing, we would never get one of these things closed over here. So I mean, I would like not to mess with that, but I mean, more clarity we could get, the better. Okay, any problem with improvements or accessories? So I wanted to.
Around pool, but it doesn't mention hot tub.
Hot tub is included with the house.
Bill, how are most people handling like the Ring, the doorbell camera?
Go right now?
Like the Ring doorbell,
Video doorbell.
the video doorbells that have cameras.
Staying right there unless they're excluded.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, since pictures are going to go away,
Yep.
does the seller have an obligation to
They do not.
Fill the hole.
You do not have to fill, yes, they do not have to fill the hole. I would take the paintings and, no, unless it's asked that they do so, they're not required by any property code or law or procedure to fill in a hole and try and patch it there. Now, some do. That's lovely if they do. Sometimes when you do it, it doesn't match too well, which gets you just in as much trouble as another. The buyer wants no holes in the wall and repainted. They need to ask for that. So they need a reasonable expectation that when you buy a house that has a lot of art, you're going to inherit a house that needs a new paint job or you're going to have to cover the hole.
Well, that would be the same case for TV.
Except the mount is included. I mean, it's clearly identified here that you're leaving the mount.
Yeah.
So when you take something that was permanently affixed, now you have an obligation to fix what was permanently fixed. Same with the rods. If you want to exclude it, it's fine. But when they see the hole from the rods, they expect it to be fixed.
Okay,
so it needs to be like you
the
never had a mount
chandelier-
there or you never had a rod there.
The chandelier, do they have to put a light fixture back?
They do not. They need to tap that where there was, so that people can then put in their own pictures. You don't have to make the electricity go away and push it up there and take low protection and sheet rock. You just need to put a cap on that when you have a chandelier or a light fixture like that.
So when the buyer walks in on the day of walkthrough and the houses look like an art gallery before, and they can sit
Their
there and walk
agent
through it.
should have set a reasonable expectation of what it is that they're going to get.
But can
They cannot.
They can't.
They can't say, I expected a freshly painted house. No,
Well, they're gonna paint the house.
they're going to paint the house,
Yeah,
especially if it had a lot of art in it.
Yeah, because they can't hold up the closing or whatever.
Because the
That's normal.
buyer took their painting down and removed the little nail? No, that was the expectation that the buyer was going to move his couch and move his dining room table and move his piece of art. And now, if you were hiding a stain under a rug that you knew about, You get into that problem all the time. There's a big black spot where the dog peed 4 times, and so you put the rug in the middle of the hallway, and they didn't realize that there was going to be a dark stain there. We have a problem there. We should have disclosed that because we know that the dog peed there for a long period of time. That we covered it up. We aren't saying that you're not going to get anything other than I'm going to take my furniture and you're going to, you know that it was held up somehow and it was going to, that's what you're getting. If you want something different, you need to ask for it. Yes?
When you say a cap chandelier, do you mean cap the wires or a plate?
Yeah, the actual cap. It's a term for the electric.
But not a plate to cover the hole?
Yeah, plate.
Okay.
Just like the one right there.
Yeah, just like
So
that.
you can't just cap the wires that are hanging?
No, you need, that's an acceptable version.
You probably should cap the wires too, but.
Well, yeah, that cap the wire.
Yeah.
Tap, any other question? Page 2, we've got those exclusions up there, so I want you to write things in there, even though we know that they are naturally excluded. We're clear. We're taking, everyone needs clarity. We're taking the washer, we're taking the dryer, we're taking the refrigerator, we're taking the TV, we're taking little Johnny's curtains. Whatever we're taking there. Okay, homeowners
Do
association.
you like saying C agent?
I do not like
Okay.
seeing agents. I don't want
Okay,
that.
you want that, okay.
I want to know what it is. I want everyone to know what it is. Mary Ann should be able to tell what's excluded.
Okay.
You're out of town, and I should be able to describe it to them. You need to be able to go enjoy your vacation in the Bahamas, and I need to be able to look up and have total clarity
Okay.
what the owner intends to take with it. What I'm really selling and what I'm not. Okay, listing price. Okay, so here's a fine example of where I think the sellers are probably nervous about listing agreements. We didn't have the listing price there, you put it in there. It says seller agrees to sell the property for the listing price or any other price acceptable to the seller. There is a law thought that says if you bring them in, you list for $1.2 million, you get an offer for $1.2 million, they're forced to sell it for that. And they're under no obligation to sell that house. We didn't earn our commission if we brought them an offer for $1.2 million, okay? So if the seller wanted to scratch out that sentence and say, no, I'm not going to agree if you get an offer for my sales price that I'm going to sell, okay? It's okay with me. We're not going to make them pay us a commission if we bring them an offer for list price that they don't find acceptable. There's lots of other terms associated with that also. But if a seller, you know what I'm saying, wants to scratch that out or something, it's okay with me. It's between me and him, and we're not making him sell his house. We're not making him pay us a commission if you didn't earn it or whatever. So that's an example of something that I find acceptable for the seller to strike out. Now, I would be clear. If we take this listener, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, this is between the brokerage firm and my broker, Bill Baldwin, and you. He's not going to make you sell a house that, or enter into an agreement that you don't find acceptable. Once we enter into a real estate contract, that agreement is no longer between you and Mr. Baldwin. It's between you and the buyer, and a whole new set of rules kick in over here. This one is just between Boulevard Realty and you and I. Once you enter into the real one, that's no longer, I don't have any say about how that works. The whole difference of law works over there. Don't enter into a contract you don't want to agree to those terms to. And this listing agreement, is between you and Boulevard Realty. Okay? So, on the term,
Okay, when you drop off, when you go ahead and drop off that listing agreement, you leave.
I leave that what we do. That's
Okay.
correct. I never come with a predetermined price.
Good.
On the listing term, I would think I would do what's reasonable. I don't want to agree to go to Match.com and date someone for 6 months. I want to go on a date or two and figure out how it works, and then when it's going great, I want to keep on dating. Okay? So I think a reasonable listing term is 90 days. I think if it's going great, we keep on going. But I wouldn't, if I was a seller, I don't want to agree to list with some Martha Turner agent for 6 months and they be shitty 3 months into it, or 1 month into it, or 1 week into it. So I think I would agree to a reasonable time frame. But don't create a lot of stress. everything on earth cannot expire December 31st. There's nobody here working on December 31st, remember? So I mean, just set it at a reasonable time frame. If I entered in today and said, all right, let's just go to the end of the summer and reevaluate after school starts. And that's a pretty reasonable time frame for me. I'm in the middle of July, maybe I want to get to October 31st and then reevaluate. It's going great, I want to keep on going. If it's not, then we'll just agree that we'll, terminate the listing and do whatever else is best for you. So I think a 6-month proposal in the beginning scares off a lot of people, and it's just not necessary. It's just not necessary. So,
How many folks come to you and say, okay, I want 2 months?
2
That's what
months.
happened to me the other day. I want 2 months.
I think it's not uncommon. Why is it that you want 2 months? You're going to try for 2 months. If it doesn't work, you're going to pull it off the market, remodel, and sell again in the spring. Okay, I think that's a reasonable period of time. I will tell you that when we talk about listing phenomenons, we're going to talk about 2 things. Everyone prefers white, clean, blank slate, and everyone wants the brand new listing. You hadn't sold the damn listing in 30 days anyway. All you've got is trouble on your hands, okay? There's no great incentive for your seller to agree to some long-term listing. If it hasn't gotten an offer in the first week or 2 or 3, you're going to spend a lot of time and effort working on this listing. And something was wrong. Something was wrong, okay? So you want to try and get these listings. Now, you need a certain amount of signs to stay out in the neighborhood for an extended period of time, and new construction sort of things work that way. I would think you're going to know how well you're doing, and the seller is going to be reevaluating you based on what happens in week 1, 2, and 3. And your honeymoon's over after about that 3rd week anyway. So why not just take the 2-month listing?
Because you pour a lot of money into it and a lot of energy.
I think you pour a couple $100 into getting a sign that gives you the opportunity to make between $15,000 and $30,000. I don't think it's a lot of money.
Okay.
I think I have a lot of money. I got a $12,000 office and I got a payroll for 23 people, but you invested in a photographer. I invested in everything else. Right? Let's be realistic.
But if you're
I'm paying Selena, I'm paying Marianne, I paid for the sign, I paid for it all. You paid for a photographer. And the chance to capture another buyer, sell them a house, sell them another house. So I think you're going to know in 2 months. Now, something.
Okay, you know the expression enough rope. She's overpriced. She's overpriced and wanted 2 months, and I just felt like, you give.
You're going to know that it's overpriced.
I know that.
She's going to know that she's overpriced.
Yeah, well, I just thought it.
Listings are commodities, though. So if you're I can take 1050 Heights Boulevard. I've had the thing listed for about 2.5 years. Okay? But he is 100% committed to me.
I love that.
And we know, I knew 3 years ago, that house, that office that we're selling, is not going to be the same value that he wants to sell it to until Heights Mercantile is finished at 11th Street, and there are thriving businesses across the street, which is going to be 6 months from now. So I get the 1.2 million. I got the $800,000 offer, we said no. We got the $900,000 offer, we said no. 3 days ago, we got $1.1 million. I said the same thing. The value, my seller, is not selling this property for $1.1 million today when it will be worth $1.2 million 6 months from now. And that's what he's selling. He's selling the future value of that property, not the current value. And he's okay with me. We've been talking about it for years. It was not going to sell with declining oil values. It was not going to sell at oil at $30 drum. It's only going to sell at $70 a barrel of oil. And when that property at 11th Street, when they spend the $20 million finishing it and they're thriving businesses, then he's willing to sell his property for $1.2 million because that's what it's really going to be worth.
Well, why did you list so long a time?
Because someone might want to buy, because I had it 3 years ago for $1 million, you could have bought it, and he saw the value going up. Then we raised the value to $1.1 million. Now he's not willing to sell it until the value is worth $1.2 million. It's an option. We're going to sell 1050 Heights Boulevard to someone who thinks it's worth $1.3 million 1 year from now. And that's the only one we're going to sell it to. If you were trying to buy the bargain, he's not willing to sell you his future value. That's his commodity. It's commercial, that's right. So the key is a good relationship with your seller. But yes, we have 90-day listing
You do
agreements.
have that magic. Okay, both of them.
Well, I have a
Set on
10-year
the market for
relationship.
2
with-
years.
Yeah, I did.
That's amazing.
They had an agent, they bought my listing 12 years ago at the condo complex on Arlington by High School. They had an agent, we mailed them stuff, we invited them to parties, their agent got out of the business. We then managed that property, it took me 2 years to sell that one, they bought my listing. Yes, but when I met them 2.5 years ago, I told them, I can't sell green trim deal and black toned granite. I can't sell it. I tore it out of my own house. So if you want to sell that, you must wait for someone who's willing. Now, they were building a house in Mississippi. Their house got delayed anyway. They didn't have anywhere to go last year. They weren't in a hurry to sell. It's relationships. It's relationships. Establishing a relationship. Okay, we're on page 2. Compensation. We are only going to take listings at 6%. All compensation is negotiable. By federal law, we must say, and you must reemphasize, commissions are negotiable. They are negotiable. I have to say that by law. I'm only willing to take 6% or greater.
Good.
I'm willing to take 7. I'm willing to take 8. I'm not willing to take less than 6%. And we charge everyone the exact same. Doesn't mean I never get to buy a clicker over here or pay for someone's shampooed carpet, but I mean, I'm on agreement, and I ethically am not going to be able to sleep at night knowing that you charge 5.4 and you charge 5.7 and he charged 6. Can't do it. I don't know how to do that. So I don't have to think about it. We charge everyone the same. The guy doing 20 transactions, the guy doing the first transaction, the fee that Boulevard Realty charges. The reason that we've been here for 20 years, the reason we're going to be here for 20 years down the road is that we charge every seller the same, 6%.
Do you allow agents to give back their portion?
I do. We allow, an agent may do with their portion what they want. So Brandon's representing his father, and they're buying a $300,000 house, and the commission's 3%. And so that's whatever. If Brandon wants to give up his 70% to his father, he can do so. That's fine with me. I don't care. We charged that, and Brandon did what he wanted with his money. He can buy him a $3,000 bottle of champagne, or you can give him $3,000. I don't care what he does with his portion.
Well, I thought it was illegal to pay anybody but another realtor or a sorry, you just blew my mind.
We do very little of this anyway. I mean, we're talking about less than
I thought it was illegal.
1/2%. It's not illegal.
Lawyer or
It's not illegal. I don't want to produce mortgage fraud if we're using some of the money to pay the mortgage or something, but it's not illegal for Brandon can buy closing gift. He can buy him a fence, he can buy him a brand new TV, or you can give him $1,000 of his commission. I don't care. So long as that's how it goes. I don't want you getting a habit. Work very hard for your money. It's never about one transaction. It's like Picasso. You can draw on this little napkin and he says, it only took you 30 seconds to do that. No, it took him 30 years to do that, to make that worth $30 million. It was never about this transaction. It was about the years of history, the investment, the more that we have given back to this community.
Is that on the closing statement? If he
What?
gives $1,000 to his dad, is that on the?
It's usually a contribution letter that we do at closing if we're paying $1,000 towards their closing costs, and we do a contribution letter.
You can only read for a private transaction. You cannot read for an outside buyer. You have to read for that.
Yeah, it's usually a contribution letter. Or we could reduce the price, we could reduce the price. Star had a deal, and that agent gave up on Morrison. We let them give up their commission as a reduction of price or something. What did we do?
Yeah, she had a cousin that she was selling the house for, so she gave up to 2% of her commit.
We just agreed up front that that agent, who's not in our firm, was getting 2% of the commission, and we got the broker to send us a letter that they were in agreement with that. And it's not like it's not.
Did you put it on the HUD?
I mean.
I think that when we reduced the price by the 2%, right? The price reflected a 2% reduction of contribution from the buyer's agent. That's how that works.
I had to write it in agent remarks.
Yes.
So that if an appraiser were to see it. And I-
Okay. Paragraph 5, B through D is another area that I think the sellers get nervous, especially if they read every line whatsoever and what they do. So this is, so if they want to scratch out part of this sort of thing, it would not be uncommon for someone to say, my buyer, my seller doesn't want to say that. That's fine. This is what I would say. Once you're under contract, you're obligated by these rules. If you want to scratch out something that says they're not going to be breach of this contract if we bring them an offer and it's not acceptable, then we're not going to charge them anything, okay? If they fail to disclose to us something, they're selling the house, we get under contract, and it's really owned by their mother and not them, they got another whole set of problems over here because they've entered into an agreement of a house they don't really own. I don't think we haven't had that problem or whatever. So they are then in a breach of contract. This is talking about the agreement between Boulevard Realty and the seller, and we're not going to earn any money unless the property goes to close, and we'll collect our money at closing. So you have to have another contract, an actual sales contract, for us to have earned anything. Okay? Just because we enter into a listing agreement, we're not going to earn anything. We're not going to get paid anything. Okay? So some people are a little hesitant to sign those paragraphs. The only area we have that's remotely gray about this is these relocation companies, and they require us to do something. We have several always at any given moment. They require the real estate firm to pay for the utilities. They require us to clean it. They require us to mow it, which is fine. We do enter into an agreement with them that we're going to get paid back for those services, whether it closes or not. I'm not going to pay for someone's electricity over there for Cardis and then not get paid back for it. Point. So we enter into an agreement. Those are the only reimbursable expenses that we're going to get paid for with regards to a relocation company. And almost in every instance, that's us doing it. So if you enter into a relocation agreement and it requires the firm to pay for the utilities, Maritza has one right now, we've got several of them going on, then Arturo will go put the utilities in my name and we will send that company a bill. We always get screwed a little bit. How do you bill them the day of closing? You don't know what the electric bill is, but it's part of the cost of doing business over there. We are accustomed to dealing with it. Okay. Any question about the fees there?
For the relocation company wants 40%.
Usually 42.5. You do not have to agree to that. You can say no, but you don't have to take the listing.
But
yes.
we can, if it's a relocation, do that.
If you,
Commission, or is that part of or we contribute that piece out of ours?
no, you can do a relocation, and you can ask me if we will participate with a relocation company. If you're willing to go and do that, then yes, we will. We're doing it for the longer good, not for one particular good. And generally with some client that we have some relationship with anyway. Okay, so we don't actively pursue relocation business because that's not the client we want. But if my client of 10 years takes a job with Shell and they're relocating them to Ohio and they're required to use a relocation company, I would rather us make the 56% or whatever and still have a good relationship so that they refer our friends, and they might not last at the new job, they might come back, so I'd rather we have a relationship with them already, pay the relocation company what they ask for future business with that client and their referrals. Okay? But we're not actively going to Shell and say, we want to be Shell's provider over here. Let us sign up and pay 42.5% of everything that we earn to you forever for people we have no relationship and have to show them Katy, Cinco Ranch, and Pearland. Not doing it. Not doing it. Almost always it's someone we've already sold them the house and now they're getting moved.
And in that case, we'll be our 50% together.
That's correct. We're just going to do it the way it normally works, the normal split of whatever's left over. Okay? Okay, protection periods are about the most misunderstood thing in our industry, so I'm going to try my best to explain it to you. Boulevard Realty has no protection periods. Okay? Never in any scenario do we have a protection period. Never in any scenario do you need to put any number of days there. Never, 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 never are we going to enter into any agreement where people don't think that we are fair and ethical and believe in our services and value. Okay. So the way this is designed, it's designed if you have a listing and you had 9 open houses and you got an offer from someone, and then the listing expires, and you showed the house to 30 people, you could provide a list to the seller, and for some period of time, before they relisted with anyone, if they sold that house, you would get paid. Okay? That's how it's the basic theory of it. Okay? In my world, you have to represent someone, the buyer or the seller. If the seller doesn't want us to represent them, we're not going to get paid. If the buyer doesn't want us to represent them, we're not going to get paid. Okay? That's how it works. We're not going to make someone pay us, and we're their agent, but they didn't really want to use us because there was some protection period. In most scenarios on Earth, someone relists with somebody else, and all the protection period goes away anyway. So let's pretend it's this way. There's a Martha Turner listing. It expires on May 31st. And they list with us on June 2nd. And they sent somebody, they can send it to us or the seller, the list of 100 names. Ashton Martini sends the list. None of that is valid. None of that works for anything because the seller has entered into an agreement now, a listing agreement, so we're going to represent the seller in any scenario. And if a buyer comes to us or, it says they want us to represent them, they're not going to be represented by Ashton Martini anymore. They're under no obligation to use Ashton. They can use whoever they want. So we're going to represent them, or some other agent could represent them. So the protection period doesn't work anyway when a house is listed. No scenario that it works. Only works if there's some expired, or someone decides to be a FISBO, and they really are trying to screw the agents by going back to the people that made an offer or going back to someone that signed in for an open house. And reaching back out to them and say, now you can come and I'll sell the house and we don't have to pay the realtor a commission. We don't want to force those people to pay us anyway, right? Who do we represent? Hardly in any scenario does anyone want us then. So we're not going to ever have a protection period.
So we just put 0.
You put NA. It's NA in every scenario that we have. The only scenario you really need to know how this works is if you list a house that was listed with someone else and you get a list of names, and I have to call their broker and say, your agent's stupid as hell. He didn't read what it says. Who does he represent? He can represent the buyer, and we're happy to pay him 3%. The seller is not protected. The seller's entered into a new listing agreement. We have a valid listing agreement. Do you have a valid listing agreement? You can't make the seller pay you if you don't have a listing agreement. So that's almost the whole scenario. An agent sending us a list, assuming that they had protected somebody. They haven't protected anybody when the seller's entered into a new listing agreement. They can still represent the buyer, bring you the buyer, pay you 3%. So we always put NA. That should make the seller happy. Always put NA. Always put NA. We have no scenario where we're going to protect anybody. We're never going to provide a list of names of people and say these people are protected. If someone wants to use this to write an offer, we're happy to represent the buyer. We're happy to represent a seller that wants us to represent them. We don't want to do business with anyone else. Okie doke. Next item, these listing services and when you're going to enter. This is where this gets us, and this was the reason this whole section comes into play. We can take any listing that we want and play by whatever rule that we want to play by. But if we want to play by the MLS rules, we have to play, I must agree to play by the rules that they provide. Okay? And the rules provide, if we're going to put houses on the multiple listing service, you have to have a listing agreement for that. Okay? So where it gets people in trouble is this coming soon. You've talked to John Smith and it's coming soon, and you put your coming soon sign out there because you want to try and get a buyer right quick because you don't want to co-op with Tim Surratt. Okay? And I understand that, but that's not a good scenario in almost any scenario. That's not in the seller's best interest. The seller's best interest is to create a bidding war so that they get the highest value of the property. So you rarely want a bunch of coming soon signs. I don't think it's a good, I can't figure out who it's good for. It's not good for the seller. If you list a house for $1 million and you say coming soon, and you've got an offer for $1 million, it would be unethical to accept the $1 million because you don't know that the market's not willing to pay $1.1 million. So you've gotten in a hurry. Even these cards, I get them at my own house, sold a house in 1 day. You screwed the seller that you represented. You inherently performed an unethical task by not letting the market decide what was the value of the house. There's no arrogant individual that can tell you what a house is worth. It's worth what someone's willing to pay for it. And you wouldn't know what someone's willing to pay for it unless you told the world that it's out there and available to be purchased or whatever. So taking an offer in the first hour or the first day is not, it's in whose best interest? Probably the buyer, if he thinks it's worth more than that, but I can't fathom how it's good for the seller, and we represent the seller in these scenarios. So I wouldn't take an offer in the first day. I would do the same scenario. Put the sign up on Wednesday, start the showings on Friday morning, get through the first open house, tell people to submit their highest and best offers by noon on Monday. That's what I would do. Then you can evaluate what the market's willing to pay for it. That's good business. That's reasonable real estate. That we represent the seller, and that's in the seller's best interest, not being in a hurry to take the first offer. Someone like that's often willing to have buyer's remorse anyway. You haven't really been able to determine the market value, so I mean, I would be very careful. But if you put coming soon, you must have a listing agreement that says you have listed this property and the seller wants you to put it on the MLS at a future date. The seller knows you're baiting somebody to get something. Every scenario, it's for the buyer's agent to get more buyers, right? It's why is this in the seller's best interest?
Also, sometimes it's when I'm getting in.
Exactly.
I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying, fine, as long as the seller knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
The seller wants you to put, so I like that too. I'm going to put the sign up on Wednesday. We're going to start the first showings on Friday. You know, we're going to put it on, and so, but my list agreement has to say, I listed on June 1, and I'm putting it on the MLS June 5th at the seller's request. And you got to fill this out, because if you see a coming soon sign, or anyone does, you can call the broker and say, please email me your listing agreement. I need to be able to have proof that you have it listed. And the MLS has the ability to do that, or restrict you from using the MLS. So do we want to use the MLS or not? If you want to use the MLS, you got to play by their rules. So you have to have a signed listing agreement in order to do that. So if you put coming soon, you make damn straight that you have a listing agreement that started before the time you put the coming soon out there and says you're going to put it on the MLS at a future date. And why?
So you check box 1, and then
Seller requests that they go on MLS after they clean up the house and declutter on Father's Day weekend and start the MLS on Monday. Reasonable. That's what they want to do.
they take till Wednesday. What happens if hypothetically you email this and you plan on putting it on Monday and it says that, but it took till Wednesday?
If you have something from the seller that says, I'm not ready, I want to wait 2 more days, you can just have the email and that works just fine.
But it's not as
It's not as strict. I mean, there are fluctuations in days. The most important thing is that you have the start date of the listing.
It has to be switched all the time. It cannot be
That's
a
right.
month.
Right. And the seller has to be aware. It can't be the buyer's agent. It can't be the listing agent just trying to get a bunch of buyers. You're using the sign in order to get a buyer and circumvent something. It's fundamentally fair for the seller. That's the most important thing for the seller.
You know, there is a benefit to the seller. I've sold 4 off market.
If that's what
I
they
know
want.
for a fact 2 of them went for more than the other one on the street. That's identical.
It's
A lot sold for $10,000 more than me. So there is this coming soon can draw the buyer to pay maybe a premium so that it doesn't go on the market.
Yeah.
sure I mean,
There could be a benefit.
there could be. But I'm telling you, I am a really smart real estate agent. I am really, really, really smart. And I told Heather Williams her house was worth 1.2 million on paper, but let's list for 1,279,000, and I got $81,000 more than that, because there are really stupid people who are willing to overpay, and that was to Heather's advantage. So I not only want to sell to that buyer who wants to pay $10,000 more, I represent the seller, and if there's a buyer that wants to pay an outrageous amount of money, then that's in Heather's best interest. And we wouldn't have known that if we took the first offer that was $10,000 higher. And we got an offer at 1.3 million, but I managed to get one for $1,351,000 cash, not subject to appraisal, buyer paying the title policy.
Yeah.
Isn't that in Heather's best interest?
Yeah.
Even though I'm telling you it wasn't worth that, someone else was willing to pay for it.
Right, but when there is a comp that becomes on market, because I don't know what this other one sells for, it's 305 is what it sells for. But it's ending, and we go on the market as a coming soon, and it closes after we're under contract, then there's benefits. It's a comp at that point, but the real estate agent would have been able to say, well, the one next door, for dirt value sold at 305, you have the flooded property.
Well, this is what I would say. There is nothing worse on earth than to take a listing and sell it in the first day, and then that seller, 5 days later, gets a note in their mailbox that said they would have paid $50,000 more if your agent had just allowed enough time for someone to show it. The only scenario that is that the agent got them in a hurry to accept an offer, and their agent screwed them out of $50,000. That's what the seller is going to think. Now, often that buyer is not real, and they would have terminated or could have asked for a
And I'm not, that's doing what's in the agent's best interest.
That's right.
I'm talking about when you're doing it for the sellers.
Yeah.
And
There are many sellers, and remember, there are plenty of scenarios where we get an offer $10,000 more, and the seller wants to take this one that's $10,000 less. They don't have to take the most expensive offer. They take the one that's in their best interest. And some sellers are willing to just sell what they don't want to put it on the market. They don't. I have plenty of them that want to sell. And they are newly married, and this husband and this wife, and she's got a few kids, and he had kids. They don't want their grown kids to know what they sold the house for. They're happy to sell it for a number they were happy with, and they're happy to take, maybe they could have gotten more, but their kids are going to know what it sold for, and they don't want to sell it. There are plenty of people that want to sell who don't want their boss to know they're selling a house. There are plenty of people that don't want their coworkers to know what their house is worth. There are scenarios, I'm agreeing with you, but we just have to be in the seller's best interest. Okay, we're on page 2 here.
Time and an agent called me, asking me about the price. I did feel a little uncomfortable telling her the price.
It's not listed on the MLS?
Basically, like, it's gonna be up alive like this, tomorrow, I'm waiting for the pictures. But I asked the guy, the seller, he wanted to tell this person, I had to say yes, go ahead and tell her, and then I told her, and then she said, okay, then I talked to my client, and that's what.
It's the seller's decision.
Yeah.
Okay, tax period listing services, you understand about the MLS, and make sure it's very clear here. I mean, in no scenario, no matter what's written, I don't care what the buyer and seller agree, I have an obligation to the MLS. If we put a property on the MLS, we're going to leave it on the MLS, and we're going to report the sold price. So there's plenty of people that write an offer and say, seller will remove the property from the MLS and not disclose to the MLS the final sales price. The seller doesn't have the option to do that, okay? The seller doesn't control the MLS. I'm a member of the MLS, and my MLS membership requires that we report sales. So in no scenario, I don't have to agree to it. The seller and the buyer can agree to whatever they want. I'm the broker. I'm the member of the MLS. I'm going to report the sale on the MLS. Hear what I'm saying? We're not going to not report the MLS, because our ability to be on the MLS is such that I have agreed when we put a property on the MLS that I will leave it on the MLS. This listing agreement says that right there. It's told the seller that we're going to report the information and the final closing price. It's very clear here. I'm not going to agree to anything else other than that. The only information we really have is access to sold information. Okay? Listing content. This section makes it clear that we own the photos of this house, that is the content, and the information on the MLS, and that information belongs to me and will be disclosed, and I can use that content in the future. So the people who buy a house and want us to take down the photos after closing, I don't have to agree to that, okay? We own the copyright to those photos. I have shared it to the multiple listing service. Those photos are going to be on the MLS for the future. We need the ability to see what a house looked like 5 years ago when we go on a listing appointment in 2025 to figure out if they remodeled the kitchens and bathrooms or not. That's how the MLS works. So that's what it's talking about, the content. And they're agreeing to that. We're not agreeing to remove the photos after closing.
How long do those listings stay up on the MLS?
I mean, they're basically there forever. The ones that go away are the ones that are listed and never sold. Let's be clear, what I said was not correct. Sold information stays on there forever.
Okay.
If you just list, it will go away after 6 months.
10 years from now, pictures will still be available.
If it was withdrawn or expired or never sold, it will go away, and if it's sold, it will be there. They're going away, they're not always there. So your record, let's say you sold for you were trying to sell for 5 months and you withdrew it, and you go a year down the road, none of that information is not going to be there. It's not going to be there. It may be there currently today, but it's not going to be there. Okay, access to the property. So and they will read all that. I mean, they're granting us access to the property. They're granting us access to use a key box or not. If they don't want to use the key box, then that's fine also. Please hide your Rolexes and your diamond rings. Page 5, if they had a tenant and they used our promulgated form, we don't need permission from the tenant to put a lockbox up and show the house. But if they have their coworker over there, they never signed any lease, we do need the information for the tenant to understand how the access is going to be. So that's what TAR 1411 is there. So you see what I'm saying? If we had a normal lease, we leased it, now we're going to sell it, they're month to month, I don't need TAR 1411. I need TAR 1411 if they don't have that scenario. All good there? We have insurance. If someone falls off the back deck and they break their arm, I have insurance, but our insurance is going to go after the seller's insurance. That's how it works. They're the primary insurance holder. We're the secondary insurance holder. So it's not like our insurance company isn't going to go after their insurance company. There's inherent risk when it comes to selling a house. So let's make the risk as least as possible. So while we do have insurance, I want to be clear what it says though. Our insurance will go after their insurance. How that's going to work. Cooperation with broker. I would explain this to your sellers. We intend to cooperate with people who are members of the Houston Association of Realtors and subscribe to the multiple listing service and have access to data, information, and a lockbox. While someone could be licensed in Abilene and the law allows them to sell a house in Houston, the greatest liability for our sellers is to sell to someone who has no information. A doctor who can perform medicine at Methodist Hospital in Houston cannot walk into a hospital in El Paso and perform surgery. There are rules and regulations for that doctor and for the lawyer and for the realtor. And while the law allows it, we do not have to share our compensation with that because there's greater liability. We would encourage someone to have access to data. If someone writes an offer and then someone buys it and they move in there and then the neighbor says, I can't believe you paid $600,000. That house was really only worth $500,000. And that agent who represented them never had access to a comp, never had access to licensed appraisers or inspectors into our region. They didn't have very good representation. They had poor representation. And we feel like that my insurance company and myself agree that that is tremendous liability to our sellers later. So in order, the best way to discourage that is not offer anyone compensation for doing that. Not like we're trying to keep the 6%. We're trying to get the buyer adequate representation. They don't want to, they can pay us to represent them, they can pay Remax to represent them, I don't care. They need representation. So this requires representation, and it says that we're only going to cooperate with members of the multiple listing service. So we don't put anything, we don't contribute to non-MLS brokers. We only put 3% if the other broker represents the buyer. A sub-agent, which is allowed in the nation, is an agent that brings a buyer but doesn't represent the buyer, just represents the seller. The seller is entering into a listing agreement. We don't need another agent to represent you, right? We don't need a sub-agent. You'd have 2 agents working for you, and no one's representing the buyer, which creates greater liability for us later. We require the buyers to have an agent, a buyer's agent. We don't allow sub-agency. We don't pay any sub-agents. We don't allow sub-agency. We don't agree to sub-agency. We're not going down the path of sub-agency. It's not like it's not common in other states, but we're not in other states. We're in Houston. So we're only going to compensate a broker who represents a buyer who's a member of the multiple listing service. Any issue with that? It's in the seller's best interest. Got to explain intermediary to the seller. In every scenario where we have a listing represent the seller. When someone makes a phone call, we represent the seller. We're providing information that the seller asks us to provide on their behalf. We represent the seller when there's a sign in the yard. Okay? You represent the seller. You have to have the permission of the seller to also represent the buyer. So you're answering the phone call, you're answering the inquiries, and you're showing the house on behalf of the seller. Okay? The seller wants you to show the house. They want to sell the house. They want you to represent them to sell the house. They may or may not want you to represent the buyer. You can tell a buyer anything that you can tell another agent who would represent the buyer. And you can't tell a buyer anything you can't tell Amanda Anhorn. This is a lovely opportunity to say, seller something from the seller about what it is that I say. I get the offer, I forward it to his email. I don't necessarily call him right then. I'm obligated to show him that we got another offer. He does not want me to bother him, and he wants me repeatedly to explain he's willing to sell under these terms and only these terms. And that's his story. That's what he's willing to say. Not willing, he doesn't need to sell, he's willing to sell in the future. He may not be worth $1,195,000. He doesn't care. He's willing to sell under those terms. That's the story. That's what I'm allowed to tell him. Okay? So you need to define what it is that you're going to say. Why are we selling? People are going to ask why you're selling. What is it that you want me to tell them? You can't just make something up. I need to know what the story is. And I think we fail to do this on a regular basis. We're on our own out there just saying, and when you don't know, it's like the seller is willing to sell at this price. That's what you do now, if the other terms are favorable. And I think it's good to have a story. If it's vacant, yes, they've moved on and they're willing to sell at this price. If they don't get their price, they'll consider renting or other options later. But we have to be careful. We represent the seller, and you don't want to say something that the seller wouldn't say. Okay, so what are we selling now?
What if they're divorcing and they don't like the idea of you saying?
It's perfectly fine. You don't have any obligation. These sellers.
Oh, because people go, oh, yay.
Jamie and I may not be married, and we may have bought something, and now we don't like each other, and we just want to sell it because we don't like each other. We don't have to tell the world we don't like each other. We just say we're willing to sell enough at this price. So we represent the seller So you have to have the permission of the seller to represent the buyer. And you have to have the permission of the seller if anyone in our firm represents the buyer. They don't have to choose so. But you have to explain, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, would you like anyone from Boulevard Realty to be able to show this house in addition to myself? And is there any scenario you wouldn't want someone from Boulevard Realty to show this house? And if they say, yes, I'm uncomfortable with that, we just need to have a better conversation with them. Okay? Because we're just not being clear. We can't tell that buyer anything that I can't tell Amanda Anhorn. I only tell, it's Jamie's listing, she can tell Becky the exact same thing she can tell Amanda Anhorn. If they say they contemplated a price reduction, so I'm thinking that they might be willing to take $10,000 less, I can tell that to Amanda Anhorn, I can tell it to Becky. I can only tell Becky the same thing I can tell Amanda. And if they're comfortable with that, then we proceed on down the path. When you enter in, so let's say you show a house and now someone wants to buy that house. So now they want you to represent, the buyer wants you to represent them on that transaction. Okay? Got to go back to the seller. Say, Mr. Seller, someone wants me to represent them as a buyer. I can tell them the exact same thing that Amanda Anhorn can. I can run comps for them. I can tell them the average sales price. I can tell them the average mortgage rate. I can tell them the average what happens in inspections. But if you think it's better for someone else to deal with that transaction, let me know. And if we start off with me representing both, and it becomes uncomfortable, I'm going to represent, this is what you're going to, I'm going to represent you, and the broker will assign someone else in the firm to represent the buyer. And the broker, Bill, serves as the intermediary. In any scenario, I serve as the intermediary. I am the intermediary. When there's a sign in the yard, we represent the seller. Either Star represents both parties, or Star and Becky represents, Star represents the seller, and Becky represents the buyer. I am the intermediary. So the way you fill out the form that they approve for intermediary or not here, most people will, they get one more chance to approve it when you get an offer. If they're uncomfortable, then they'll notify us. And if they're notifying me along the way, we'll reappoint someone who totally has no relationship with the seller. Okay? You understand intermediary? Got to explain it to them. One more time in number 10, it talks about the confidentiality. I can disclose anything that anyone else can know. Everyone can look up what you paid for it. Everyone can look up the taxable value. Everyone can run comps. I know the listing price because that's what you put on there. I just can't tell them, unless you tell me to tell people, that's what I can tell them. So let's stay in contact about what it is that you want me to tell people. Okie dokie. If you don't, so we currently list our properties on the multiple listing service, and then we share that information to the rest of the world, okay? And it works both ways. I have to agree to put our listings out to Zillow and Schoolia and Realtor.com and Mel Reyna's website and John Daugherty's website, Martha Turner's website. And if you don't want your listing on John Daugherty's website or Martha Turner's website, I can restrict that, and I can go back in and I can eliminate it. We think it's in the best interest, though, to take your listings. We're going to represent you in any scenario. So if John Smith puts it on his website and John Smith brings a buyer, and John Smith found a buyer that we wouldn't otherwise have had, isn't that in the seller's best interest? If you don't think it's in that best interest, then we won't do that. I can control the multiple listing service, but I can't control the other websites. So they don't have the same access to real-time data or the same quality of the photos. So when I put a beautiful photo on the multiple listing service and Realtor.com picks it up and it's grainy or gray, I can't go to Realtor.com and modify it. I can only modify the one at HAR, and it will upload back to Realtor.com, not in real time. When we provide information to the realtor side, I'm providing it in real time. So when I change the price on the multiple listing service, then it goes to other realtors immediately. But to give the realtors an inherent advantage, it is not in real time on the public side. So you're not noticing if I misspell the word threshold and I correct it, it's corrected in the realtor side, but it's not corrected immediately on the public side. It will be updated, just not, it's giving the realtors a certain inherent advantage, especially when it comes to price changes. We're getting them first. You gotta explain it to them because they're saying, damn it, why didn't you correct threshold? I did, you just can't see it yet. Okay? If you don't want the information on the internet, let me know. I can't fathom why you wouldn't want that. But that's how I would explain it. I mean, we control the multiple listing service, but we don't control the others, but we cooperate with their information. There's all those other websites in the world. I would explain how financing works. Most people understand conventional financing, but they don't understand there are additional responsibilities. Very little cost today. It used to cost the seller more for a VA loan and an FHA loan. That's not really the case. It's incremental, but it's insignificant. It's not the cost. It's the additional requirements that might be made, and it's the additional layers of scrutiny, especially when it comes to inspections. Brand new houses have generally been fine, but we're experiencing the same thing. Brand new house builder selling a house, having to guarantee something in the future. They don't want to guarantee the future. So most people, given a choice, do not want to use a VA loan or an FHA loan if you're the seller. For the buyer, I understand why you might want to use them. Even with the buyers, I would try and find a way around it. So typically, we're going to choose conventional and cash and not put the others on there. If you're in the suburbs and you're in an area where people generally are putting 3% down or 5% down, or it's a more cost-effective area, you might look at those after you go down a path for 30 days on the other financing. I wouldn't start down that path. If it's an old house and it's got an old breaker box and it's got a water heater in a closet, it's got an old wooden porch that's connected to it, or a deck connected to it on the back, or rotten wood, or peeling paint, or an old roof, it ain't gonna work anyway. It just isn't gonna work. We're wasting our time there. Brand new, there is a chance it could work, but it's usually the price points that we're dealing with. It's really not gonna be a factor. The next paragraph is giving us the opportunity to advertise the property. If for some reason they don't want us to advertise the property, let me know. They're going to tell us the truth over here. They understand we're going to have it sold. On this E section there are times when your seller is not going to be in town, and I know you have some close relationship. Our insurance company doesn't allow you to sign for your seller. It allows me to sign for your seller. I'm signing for Lily's seller on the 31st. I don't know those people from Adam, but I will be able to go and speak to them beforehand and go over the settlement state. They're going to be in California or somewhere, Colorado. And they'll have to verify the day of closing that the power of attorney is still in effect. So you're not going to be able to agree to sign for your client. I can sign for your client.
You can be PM.
I can be the power of attorney for your seller or your buyer.
What page is that on?
It's E under page 7. I'm just explaining to you how it works in general. You're not allowed, our insurance company doesn't allow you to sign for your client. It does allow me to sign for your client with your client's permission, of course.
E?
E.
You said E. I thought you said E.
Where it says broker is not authorized to execute any documents in the name or behalf of the seller concerning the property. You're not, I am.
So we scratch that?
No, I'm just explaining how it works to you. I'm just going over this.
Wait, it says not authorized.
I understand, but I'm telling you how it works. You're not, I am.
But you're the broker.
I understand.
You're the person I'm signing on.
I'm telling you, this is a promulgated form from the state of Texas, and I didn't rewrite it, and then I could, but if I rewrote it, I wouldn't have that sentence. I am allowed to sign on behalf of your clients if they would like me to. I'm telling you that I can.
What do we have to do?
We have to have a power of attorney, so, we just, typically, if they represent the buyer, we have the lender do it. If we represent the seller, we have the title company.
Okay, so, but by then signing this, you cannot do it.
No.
Okay, you can do it.
It's an agreement between me and them.
Mhm.
This is just an agreement between
So
me and
go ahead and
yourself.
scratch it, because you
If
can't.
they want to scratch it, it's fine, or you can scratch it, it's fine, or you can explain it, fine. It usually doesn't come up in the very beginning. It comes up somewhere along the transaction. They're going to be on their vacation to Disney World with their kids if they plan for 6 months and they need someone to sign with. We will first hope they have a relative or they have a next door neighbor or their best friend is a better person to sign for them. I'm not like we're encouraging you to do that, but there are some scenarios I will sign for 7.5. They're traveling around the world in their trailer. They don't want to schedule themselves to come back. They don't want to lose their airline tickets. They would rather I just sign for them. I will sign for them. I will sign for Lily's people on the 31st at 9 o'clock. Yes.
So to clarify,
Uh-huh.
if you are going to sign for them, we have to stretch this out?
No, they will assign a separate power of attorney, which will have granted me their permission.
Okay. That's why this not authorized to sign doesn't matter.
It won't really matter. I'm just saying you're not allowed to sign for them.
Okay.
That's what it says.
Does the title company drop the power of attorney?
If we represent the seller, yes. If we represent the buyer, the mortgage company needs to approve it, because they need to approve it. So the title company still can work with the mortgage company on one they find acceptable. There's specific power of attorneys only limited to that house on that particular transaction. So there is no power of attorney that works, a general power of attorney. It has to be specific.
It doesn't really charge for them to drop the power.
$75, typical charge.
So if the seller wanted to make a power of attorney to me, that's.
The answer is no. The title company wouldn't allow you to do it either, but my insurance company wouldn't allow you to do it. They're not gonna allow you to, they very like me to do it. So, I mean, there are works that. And I communicate effectively with who it is that we represent. So it's not like I'm gonna go over there and sign a bunch of stuff. I'm gonna review the settlement statement with them. They're gonna verify the day of closing, the power of attorney is still in effect. It does. There are some people who just don't have a lot of relatives and friends right here. And if we need to represent the seller, and if this is in our seller's best interest, that's how we're going to do it. Okay, seller. Seller has some responsibilities. The main responsibility they have is to tell us the truth and to disclose information to us that's relative to the transaction. Okay? So especially if they're in foreclosure over here, or they've taken out some loan, or they haven't paid the roofer, I mean, this is their opportunity to come clean with us and tell us what the hell's going on over here.
But that's gonna pop up at the title company.
Generally. Sellers also agreeing to these other things. They have any big issues here. If we start with a property that's occupied and then they move out and it's vacant or whatever, we have these issues. The insurance is more expensive on vacant property than it is on owner-occupied property. There's higher risk. You don't notice the fire as much. The water damage can happen for a month before anybody notices it, remember? So generally it's more expensive and they need to switch their insurance over to non-owner occupied if at some point in the future they're no longer occupying it. So all that fine. I talked about 30 things in there at any given time. That makes sense. This is the way I'd really like for it to read. And I know you don't like for it to read this way, but this is my philosophy and I'm sharing with you at any point. I have no issue whatsoever with the language that says either party may terminate this listing with 24 hours notice. Okay? I do not want to list a house with someone who doesn't want to be listed with us. I have no issue with it. If you think this paper is keeping someone listing a house with us, you are pulling teeth with them along the way. I have no problem whatsoever. If they want to write it in, fine. I can write it in, fine. I'd rather write it in and be clear and everyone be on the up and up. We want to list houses for people who value our services and think we're doing our job and they want to pay us. And we don't want to list houses with anyone else. And I don't want to stay in bed and keep working on their behalf if they feel otherwise. Now, I'm not saying you have to write it in there, but I want you to know fully that's exactly how I feel. So if someone calls me and they hate their agent, I'm going to let them out right that second. I don't care what your listing agreement says. If I'm going to first try and see if they want to switch over to another agent, we can work on something there. I'm going to evaluate how much work the agent's done to it and try and get them paid it the best we can. But when it comes to it, I'm going to let that seller out. We're going to let them go and be happy someplace else. In every scenario. In every scenario. If you have one of those scenarios and you think that's really what your seller wants to hear, write it in there. Either party may terminate. I'm telling you, there are going to be plenty of times you don't want to be the listing agent, and you're going to want the ability to terminate, okay? Believe me, do business with people who love you, and your career will be much better off over there, okay? So you can write that in, or they can write it in, and I'm perfectly happy with it. You don't have to ask me. Okay? I know we're a little weird in that scenario. I don't care. The default in the mediation and the attorney's fees, a lot of these sellers, especially lawyers, want to write out. This comes directly from the property code. If that paragraph was not in there, it would still apply. When they scratch it out, it applies. If you scratch out all the mediation stuff on earth, they're going to send you a mediation anyway. That's how it works. You know, if you default or not, you still defaulted or not, they can scratch it out. It's the same scenario. As no speed limit sign on Heights Boulevard, and you know there's a speed limit, right? There's a speed limit everywhere. It's the same thing. If it's the law, it's the law. If they scratch it out, I don't care if they can scratch it out. It doesn't make it true. You know how many times people write things in things and it's just not true. That's not how it works. Every scenario with these tenants, tenant accepts the property as is, seller, landlord to make absolutely no repair. If the roof comes off and the rain comes in there, the landlord is obligated to fix that back. You will go to court and the judge will say, I don't care what you wrote, what you agreed to. This is the law in the state of Texas. Landlords cannot screw tenants like that. You can't do it. I have been in the courtroom. I have had it happen to us. I have tried to represent the seller, the tenant. It doesn't matter. There is a law. There is a property code. There is a rule of order, and that's how it's going to work. So if they scratch it out, they can scratch it out. It doesn't make it true. I'm not going to argue about it. I'm not going to argue with these lawyers. We'll move on down the road. I don't scratch out. But it doesn't mean that it's not true. They will send this to mediation. On the addendums, check the ones you need. Notices, I'm just kind of flip through here. And we're telling them, please remove their jewelry, drugs, valuable prescription drugs are about the next normal thing that we have happen. Their drugs are missing all the time. Always happens on a Monday or Tuesday after an open house.
Did you say drugs?
Drugs, their prescription drugs are missing all the time.
Do you ever check any of these boxes? Do you ever request the mortgage information?
No.
Condominium?
No.
Stuff?
I mean, just the seller's
Well, I
closing
know
the
the
lead
mortgage,
based on.
don't they send you the.
Yeah, you can't, I mean, it's perfectly lovely to check C and D and J and K if they're in a weird area of flood. But do you have to do all that right this second? No, we're going to get the actual notice filled out when we have to. Now, the thing we need to know about is if the seller is a foreign person. You need to ask them, are you a U.S. citizen? And they have consequences if they are selling the property and they are not a U.S. citizen. And we need to provide some clarity, and you need to come to me if you represent a corporation or an individual who is not a U.S. citizen.
Is there a new document for that?
There is. Everyone clear on that one?
Is this a new requirement?
It is, it's always been a requirement. It's just they've clamped down a lot here in the last 4 or 5 years, especially.
What's the
Certainly
document?
today.
Is it tar, trash, or what? You know?
Look, I'll just find it. I don't know.
You know what's using?
But you must ask yourself.
IRS is clamping down on it. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
It's
they've
because
got
of
over
pay
10% title.
That's right.
So,
We need to know if they're a foreign person, not a U.S. citizen.
You're supposed to do this status.
All right, questions on listing agreement? Got one. Moving on. What?
About the recording thing, so
What
like,
about the recording thing?
so,
Give me the number.
where it says, we know there's surveillance devices.
Oh, yes, she says, I'm sorry, I did want to do that. Yes, I want to go. Yeah, I want you to, we need to go over F.
Yes.
I think we need to be very careful about the nanny cam thing being on over there and these sellers having access to videos and information when people show their houses. We need to ask them, do they have recording devices and are they watching people or recording people who are looking at their house? And we must disclose to the people that they are under surveillance.
Yeah.
We need to do a better job of doing this.
So it's okay to put that in agents for more.
It certainly is. Seller keeps cameras on and records the house and is subject to being under surveillance. You're showing his, but some people may not want to show in that scenario.
So what happened in?
And I think we need to tell buyers, you need to assume you are under surveillance. And you need to be careful what you say in the front, in the middle of a house. Go outside and talk around your car. You're going to be much better off than if you say things. Don't say anything that you don't assume someone else is hearing. But I do think on the flip side, we need to disclose to people if they're under surveillance. Y'all go in my closet, you're under surveillance.
Is there any place we can't be?
I only, I watch you breaking into the garage, breaking into the back door, and in the closet. I don't record anywhere else.
Okay.
I only get broken into at the back door, and I only have jewelry stolen. The rest of it, I don't really get.
I watched that entire, Woodland Heights home tour.
I rarely ever check it, but I can log on and check it if I want to.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm not overly nervous about people in my garage. I record it. I'll be able to see who stole the Rolex. I will know if you steal my bicycle. I am tired of not knowing who steals the bicycle. We watched the guy break into my garage and take my Range Rover. I had his picture.
Did you get them?
Yeah.
Did you have something that said the home tour?
No.
Okay.
No.
Did you disclose to this guy that he was being recorded?
Do what?
Did you disclose to this guy or he's gonna sue you now? Because
I didn't know. There was a big camera right
maybe he's
there.
gonna come back and sue you now.
Okay. If you change the price of a house, if you agree down the road that you're going to extend the listing, and we have this little form here. In reality, these forms are between me and the seller, okay? I'm not overly strict about whether or not you have this form filled out and signed everywhere. If the seller sends you an email that says lower the price $10,000 to $989,900, print out that little form, you stick it in your file or put it in back agent, it's just as acceptable to me. It's the same exact scenario. I extend my listing to June 31st. You can print out the email that says that and put it in back agent. It works just as fine. That's an agreement between the seller and us. But if you don't have that, go get the form signed. You gotta have something. You can't just do it on your own. I'm not giving you total latitude. I'm just saying it's just as good to have it in writing in an email and provide the email copy to the firm in some scenario. Back agent, I guess, is where we pick these up, right? Then put it in back agent, and that works just fine. It's not, none of these sellers want to be signing a bunch of shit anyway, you know, it's between us and them. But we don't want to lower the prices. Oh my God, you lowered the price without my permission. I want you to have something in writing. An email is something in writing. If you want out of the listing, though, we probably ought to, it either expires or you probably need to go terminate the listing and have any unresolved issues resolved. So if someone wants to terminate the listing today, they call me on Allison's listing and they want out. We're going to have them sign this termination of listing, and I'm going to just sign right by there and send it right on back immediately. I will try and call you, but I'm going to let the people out of the listing if they don't want in the listing. Okay? We're not going to charge them anything. We're not going to charge them $30 for a key. We're not going to charge them for their photos. It's way, way worse bad blood than it is to try and collect $150 or your catered meal for $200. The world is too small. The neighbor's going to know, your future seller's going to know. It's just easier to eat the cost of doing business and move on down the road. Relocation companies aside. So I'm happy to do this. Information about brokerage services. We still need these little forms, and here's your opportunity to explain who we represent. We represent the buyer or the seller or both. Everything is confidential. If we represent both, we have to have the permission of the seller and a listing agreement and at the time that we get under contract. We don't require these buyer's agents agreements. I think they're a lot of trouble, except in a scenario when we represent the firm, represents both, the insurance company requires that be in writing. When I make an offer on Greenwood King's listing over there and I check the box that I'm the buyer's agent, that is a buyer's rep agreement. For that transaction, it doesn't bound that buyer to use me on the house on West Millwood. So let's be clear how the law works. Amanda Anhorn writes an offer on my listing, and the agent decides that she's the procuring agent, she wrote an offer there, okay? And they decide that they don't want to use Amanda Ann Warren because they're off by $10,000. They want to come back and use Becky because Becky's going to give them $5,000 back. We have to have Amanda Ann Warren's permission. We can't just, Amanda Ann Warren was the procuring agent there. Now, the procuring agent doesn't last forever. It doesn't mean 6 months down the road they had to use Amanda Ann Warren for that listing, but you can't have torturous interference with the transaction. So the same thing. You have a friend, they use their friend to get under contract. Now they're under contract with Mel Reyna over there at something in Oakford, and they want out of that transaction. And they call you and say, oh my God, my agent's horrible. I want you to represent me. We cannot do that unless they go to their current agent and they get their agent to release them 100% from that transaction. Then we can pick back up. In almost every scenario, that never really happens. The law is very clear. We can't go and help them on that transaction. They probably best need to just terminate, get out of that transaction. We will represent them on another house. That's fine, unless they have a buyer's rep agreement with Amanda Ann Warren. If they have a buyer's rep agreement with Amanda Ann Warren, they don't want to use Amanda Ann Warren in England. They need to go to the broker manager of Greenwood King and see if they will let them out or not. You will know real clear if they will or they will not. If they come to Boulevard Realty and they had a buyer's rep agreement with Wendy and they don't want to use Wendy anymore, I'm going to let them out immediately. Never going to make someone use an agent in this firm that they don't love. Okay? Clear about that? Intermediary I went over pretty thoroughly again. You got two choices here. Jerry writes on my listing. Brandon will represent the seller and Jerry will represent the buyer and I'm the intermediary. Maria writes on Jamie's listing. Jamie's going to represent the seller and you're going to represent the buyer and I'm the intermediary. Those are the two scenarios. You're either right, if you have your own listing, you're going to represent the seller and you're going to appoint Brandon to represent the buyer in the event that there's a conflict. Brandon will not take any money. It's a service that we're providing for you. He will finish out that transaction and you will make them all of the 6% of your 70% of whatever that is. See what I'm saying there? So if you are writing on your listing and you are going to represent the buyer, you're going to put yourself to the seller. You're always going to represent the seller. And Brandon's going to represent the buyer. In the event I'm notified of a conflict, so I'm not going to initially appoint Brandon. Appoint Brandon, and if I'm notified by either party, the seller or the buyer, that they're not being treated fairly, Brandon will take up the transaction on behalf of the buyer. He's totally unbiased over there. You're going to go to closing, and we're going to do the disbursement just if you represent both parties.
Not on D, but on E.
On E.
Yeah, when you're filling this form out, you're either using B or E. You're not using
Yeah, you're using one or the other.
B or E.
No problem there. Hey, we're moving right along. What time is it? Woo, okay, seller's disclosure. Let's move to the seller's disclosure. I want you to fill out the seller's disclosure, and I want you to continually update. Anytime something changes, update the seller's disclosure. We're not good enough about updating the seller's disclosure. When you get under contract and they have inspections and they terminate, refill out the seller's disclosure, put in the new inspection report, download the inspection report, initial that little section, update it and put it back out there. When you start out there occupying the house and 40 days later they move out of it, you need to go check that they're no longer living in the property. I mean, the seller's disclosure needs to be an accurate reflection of what's going on over there. I'm happy to go over line by line, but I don't really think that we have to. Let's just discuss some of the areas that are confusing to people.
Can you just say that we have to fill it in if it's a state or something?
If they have knowledge, they need to fill out what they know. Yes, we do. We're going to fill out, we will help you in that scenario. And there are other ways to disclose that. We will disclose, we have knowledge that the property has a composition roof with no known overlay and central air and heat and a gas furnace. Because we do know that. We put it on the MLS, for God's sake. We're going to disclose what we know. Okay, is there anything in section 1 that we don't know about? I think all that's fine. Yeah.
In what case do you use the, I always use E.
D,
I'm sorry, I always use E. You say that
okay, we're back on intermediate, sorry. You use E in the event that you're selling your listing and you're representing the buyer. That's what that means. You use D if you're writing on Melissa Kubala's listing, because that's two different brokers within the firm. So you're co-oping with a Boulevard Realty agent, you use D. You're selling your own listing, you use E.
E is my listing and D is another agent within the firm.
That's correct. Okay. Seller's disclosure. Anything on page 1 anyone not clear about?
Almost all houses have a plumbing.
Almost all houses have what?
Plumbing system.
They do? Most of them do. Alright, page, do what? Page 2, seller aware of anything in section 1 that's not working, you gotta describe over there what's going on. Same thing, if you check 2, and I would get in the habit of checking 2 a little more. I don't think when there are cracks in this driveway and there's normal cracks in separation, I would disclose it so I wasn't retracting myself later. Especially, cracks in the garage foundation or something of that nature. I mean, I think I would get in the habit of pointing out a few things. And then to say, it's normal wear and tear. It was not determined to be structural at any point in my ownership. Something of that nature.
So,
yep.
Question on some of these older homes that have tiled floors, you may see a tile that's got a cosmetic crack, is it differential selling in the house? Does we need to be that big with disclosures, or is that fine?
I think it's fine. That's not, I think normal pier and beam foundations that movable live, that's just normal. I think slab foundations where you have cracks in it is where I would probably be more inclined. If you know it had a 3-inch slope in your pier and beam house because you had John Feaster out before you listed, then yeah, I would go and put that out there and I would attach John Feaster's little report over there because it's going to bite you in the butt later. But I mean, normal cracking in a tile probably wouldn't disclose that. It's the driveway, sidewalks, slab foundations, know the pool. Pool light never works. It never works. We always fight about it later. Why don't we just tell the people they're buying it, but the pool light doesn't work? If it was easy to fix, we would have fixed it already. 3 gets us more than anything else. So let's talk about 3. You're in the 100-year floodplain. You're disclosing your flood insurance from 1414. Here's where I think we need to disclose the 500-year floodplain. Okay, and it's not easy where you're going to go and do that, but I think I would do that on the next page. House located in 500-year floodplain. Let's just tell them now. They're going to find out later. Might as well just tell them the truth. Don't want the seller sued later. I don't want to be in a lawsuit later. We all know for this period of time in our lives in Houston, Texas, disclose the 500-year floodplain. If you have flood insurance, get us the flood insurance. A few houses really are in the floodway. Don't sell anything in the floodway because that's going to get taken by eminent domain, I'm telling you. We're all going to be elevation certificate specialists here soon. The previous foundation repairs, I mean, I think you can assume every house has had some roof repair and foundation repair. So we're not talking about 1965 over here. We're talking about in the reasonable lifespan of when it's been there. But so the slab houses, I bought it, they've had previous foundation repair from Olshan. Well, then that's lovely, just put that on there. And then that's perfect that you haven't had any other, you got a basis to see if it's moved anymore since you bought it. If you had some hail damage 5 years ago, I would report that. Almost all houses have had some sort of previous treatment for termites. It's what kind of termites do they have treatment for? I just think I would just normal maintenance of termites, damage, and treatment. surprised at the number of bungalows that had previous fires up in the attic. That people don't even know about that silver paint that's up there.
Hey, Bill,
Yes.
on section 3, it talks about encroachments.
Yes, yeah, okay, perfect, lovely.
Yeah.
I think that's a lovely thing. What's that? To disclose all these encroachments, the neighbor's fence is over there on my property, or my garage is 2 feet over into the alley, or my garage on 21st Street's over into the easement, or my fence on 21st Street clearly does not follow the line. It's 10 feet on the other side of the property line. You just tell them that early on.
If it's not disclosed, or
It gives them
fires,
they can terminate.
They can terminate.
They can terminate. Failure to disclose something like an encroachment is a reason to terminate. The day before closing.
Okay.
Failure to disclose can get someone out of the contract very easily. Historic district, definitely. This methamphetamine, remember, these are these, previous houses in the suburbs where we had a meth lab in Sugar Land, and someone bought it from foreclosure, and they painted it right quick and sold it right quick, and the kid starts getting, all sorts of hives and stuff. You'd be surprised the number of those things out in Kingwood, Cinco Ranch, Sugar Land, Bolshire. You'd be surprised how many of those things there really are. Yeah, I'm on page 3 at the top, where we've added historic designation, the methamphetamines, the wood destroying damage, needing repair, and the old pool. Any pool more than about 6 or 7 years has this scenario. An old pool in Sugar Land from 1990 is going to suck that kid down there and keep him drowned in. You got to disclose what that is.
So that's in the deep end of the pool.
That's right.
Huge thing.
It sucks down the little 2-year-old and keeps him down there, and he drowns. Happens more than you think.
It almost happened to me.
Happens on old pools only had this. So we know if it's pool from the 70s, 80s, or 90s, you've got that problem. So in most, and if you have a brand new pool, it doesn't have that scenario. It's 5 years old or newer, it doesn't have that problem. But other than that, I just check the unknown box. Make them go inspect that on their own deal. But because it has that problem, but it's kind of like the lead-based paint thing.
There is no unknown box. Yes or no? They didn't put the third column on that.
Section no means you're not aware.
Well, I would check. I would circle the little box. I would not check yes or no, because I think that's deceiving. And I would say, if you have a pool built before 2000, you should circle the little box and say unknown. I would not say no.
This forms,
This is the seller providing the information that they know, and if they just don't know, they just don't know. But I'm telling you.
Some sellers feel this electronically.
Why did
They need the unknown column on this one. Someone's gonna bitch about this.
Yeah.
I would not check yes or no. Unless they happen to know. I mean, they have in some inspection report, but I'm just telling you.
I don't know if there was no left there either.
The presence of that is unknown.
I could, yes, and the presence of that should be verified by a buyer. If the pool is built before 2000, I'm saying, the answer is yes.
Okay.
Unless they've had it retrofitted.
Unless they know for a fact.
Unless they know for a fact.
Define what that is. I have no
Yeah,
idea.
it's the way the pools were designed back then, so you're sucking up the water here and you're recirculating the water over here. Well, they didn't, the suction was too great and there wasn't the preventer so when you block it, so let's just say we have a piece of metal or plastic and cut down the pool that gets to the suction. When it sucks right now, it should stop everything, release itself, and let that go up. But these don't stop. They keep sucking. And so you can get your swimming trunk there, and you're down at 10 feet at the deep end, and you can't get out, and little kids weren't strong enough to reduce. That's right. The suction was too great, and it's like the automatic shut off for your range,
Or your garage door.
or the garage door. It's the same basic concept. Yeah.
don't
Yes.
want the kids to be chasing toys.
Yeah.
That they thrown in.
We threw it in and went out and died after, right?
And then they get down to the suit or the hair.
Yeah.
That is hard.
Sure it is. It's yeah, sure it is. Yeah. Okie dokie. In need of repair, this is the same thing. I think we ought to disclose more about things that are in need of repair. You know it needs repair, just put it in there. Now, if it's Beauchamp and the dishwasher's broken and we've ordered the part and it's going to be here on Thursday, the day after, whatever, then that's fine. I mean, it's not that things don't come up. Okie dokie. Additions of things, remember my law. I'll tell you, most people have some modification, alteration, or repair without the permit. Almost all houses have something done without a permit. Allison's replaced a water heater without a permit, I'm sure of it. People just don't pull permits when they need it.
So what,
Cameras on her.
And it will bite you in the ass if you have some agent that's a sticker on it. Where it's really gonna get us is these repairs. Especially when you need to prove that a permit was pulled because it gives them a third party, the city of Houston inspector, to go inspect them. So you re-roof a house, you need a permit for the roof. You replace the water heater, you need a permit. You replace the drip leg on the furnace, you need a permit for that.
But replacing windows.
You need a permit to replace the windows to make sure that they're sealed properly before you install the window. Yes, there is an inspection to make sure there's no moisture penetration later. That's the protection that the buyer would have to know that they were installed properly. We've had our whole office at 1545 Heights Boulevard, they were installed backwards. 2727 Kirby, the high-rise, they were installed backwards. The people bought their units and they hit the glass, and the damn glass fell down 38 floors. They sued the builder who went bankrupt over the window installation at 2727 Kirby. Happens all the
Oh my
time.
God, make sure there's egress.
It happens all the time.
You have to have egress in the bedroom.
Yeah. Okie dokies? Yes?
What happens if you go to your house, they stay in the house, maybe people see without permits.
Right. I'm selling 2402 Rutland. The garage apartment was finished without a permit.
What happened if
We told the buyer up front, we finished the garage apartment without a permit, have it inspected, see what's out of code. If it's out of code, we'll deal with something that's out of code.
Even if you see like historic district?
Inside, it can work just fine. We don't, doesn't have any
Windows and-
windows will get you in trouble. In a historic district.
Window for sale.
Window to sell, front door. Yes.
So Parkview.
Parkview.
Is in Germantown.
Yep.
Okay, there's a house that's for sale that I know they did without permits. I mean.
You pull the record and there's no
No, I
permit.
talked to them I talked to the hysterical people on the phone, and they said this was.
Done without an HHC approval.
Right.
Okay.
They had an HC approval, but they replaced all the windows anyway, and they replaced all the siding anyway.
Okay.
And so.
Did they get a certificate of remediation from the HHC?
No. So what happens then? Since this is this still hanging fire that we need to take it something?
Yeah, you would go get a certificate of remediation and that would make the issue go away.
Okay.
Not that difficult.
Okay. Because can't put the windows back.
Not gonna put the windows back unless they're in the garage somewhere.
But they can make you do that. They can make you go down to.
They can make you replace them with a more appropriate window. Now, if you
Yes.
replace them with something that's reasonable, they'll issue you this certificate of remediation and it will take away your ability for your tax exemption.
Here's a house on Columbia, the guy did that, and it's still pending, because the yellow one, they're gonna make it for the site.
Yeah.
But it's still pending because he's in jail.
Yeah.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. Okay, don't want to get hung up here. Okay, these disclosure of 4 years of previous inspection. So you're selling a house that's been purchased in the last 4 years. You know you're going to have a termite inspection and a structural mechanical inspection. The seller can go and mark up that inspection all they want. They can take it and say, had this repaired by John Feaster, had this replaced by T&M Mechanical, had it reevaluated and found it unnecessary, or what they mark it up anything they want, but they just need to disclose what it is that they have and stuff that they've done. Perfectly acceptable. The issue I'm telling you that gets us is had the AC guy out in July. He said there was a leak on the Freon. The Freon's no longer available. We could shoot you with some new Freon or charge, for $1,200. We had it right here. AC went out, whatever, on Sunday, right? Or last Friday. I can shoot it for some Freon for $1,200 to replace the unit for $8,000. We're leaving here in 60 days, folks. I'm not replacing this AC for $8,000. I'll just keep shooting it full. Now, I'm not selling and disclose. I don't have to disclose that. I'm saying that's what I would do. That seems reasonable in this scenario. Plenty of people do that, and someone gets under contract. Then they bring TMN out there and say, "Oh yeah, they knew there was a leak. They just provided the Freon, knowing that it was going to freeze up the first time it turns 100 degrees outside." I'm hoping we move before it's 100 degrees outside. But I mean, I think that's what you have to disclose also. I had termites. I called the termite guy. I called Coastal. They said they had to tent and it was going to be $8,000 until my landscaping, and they didn't do that. They just decided to not do anything. Well, someone's going to disclose that later, right? It's going to catch on.
In this hot market, would you recommend buyers, sellers to do inspection reports, including termites?
I think only if there's some issue, so I think if it's a normal house, if I was selling my house, no, I wouldn't necessarily go and have an inspection. If I feel a slope and I think my house has moved significantly over the last 4 years, would I go and do something? Yes. If I had, so let's go back to my other scenario. If I had water in it and I did work after it got water, then yes, I would go have an inspection before I put it out up there. I wouldn't want the surprise of it.
What about appraisal?
No, it's not even worth messing with. They're not happy. That's just, it's a snapshot in time. It's that person's perspective. That'd be like having my portrait done by an artist. It'd be different if that artist did it than this artist did it, right?
Yeah.
Appraisals aren't, then that appraisal you can't necessarily give. It doesn't make any difference. I can hire an appraisal tomorrow, and I can find an appraisal that'll make my house worth $4 million. Because it's not subject to any review or anything. And I can get under contract, and maybe the bank sends an appraiser and says it's worth $2.2 million. So what's it really matter? That's their opinion. That's not their lender's opinion, nor their opinion. Okay, insurance claims get us all the time too. On 9, have you filed any insurance claim? Have you filed an insurance claim for hail damage on your car, on your boat? It happens all the time. We get under contract, and the insurance agent runs the deal, and my client, Jared Weeks, boat in Lake Travis, got hit. There was a $27,000 claim that showed up on his homeowner's insurance over here, and scaled the hell. I had buyers terminate because we failed to disclose this
Boat accident.
this insurance claim on the homeowner's insurance. I had to go back and I didn't know anything about it either. It was a damn boat in Lake Travis. But you'd be surprised those things that get you. So any of those sort of things, disclose, and using the proceeds. That's what I'd really be asking about these houses that flooded. Tell me about your insurance proceeds. No one knows about these smoke detectors. If they're new, they have them. If it's not new, just check in them. Let the people rely on their own information. Nobody really knows about that.
So if your house was robbed 20 years ago and you submitted a insurance claim,
Not necessary.
so
That's
how
not
long
damage to
ago?
property.
Not necessary.
That's not damage to property.
The boat doesn't have anything to do with the house.
There was a big claim against the homeowner's insurance, so if it popped up there, it made it look like there'd been a $27,000 claim, because the buyer didn't know what that was. When you went and explained it, it was not that issue, that big a deal. They ended up buying the house just fine because it didn't impact the cost of their insurance, but it made them feel like we were hiding something. Hail damage, a fire, something, right? When their insurance agent pulls up and saw the claim.
But Ron
But it didn't
didn't
say
say
If it's 20 years ago, I don't think it's relative. The world is different 20 years ago. You can't
5 years, yes.
5 years, probably, yes. I think 5 years is relative. What they're looking there is it dangerous to live there or not? And I don't think you can say 20 years ago any of these areas are the same. Sugarland's not the same. But 5 years, that's probably about a threshold. I would find reasonable. Okay. Nobody provides all this phone numbers for all that stuff. We should, but we just don't do it well. All right, lead-based paint. Let's get in the habit of having more of these little pamphlets for lead-based paint out, or email the information quicker too. We know that bungalow for 65 years was painted with lead-based paint, right? There was only lead-based paint. There was only paint with lead in it until about 1978. So I'm assuming that they painted sometime in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and 70s. And I'm assuming that somebody sanded some of that down at some point and covered it with something else. So while there's no lead-based paint that is visible right at this moment, if I tested that soil and I dug down into that baseboard, there is lead-based paint in that deal. I searched far enough to find it. Now, the real studies show that it is the particles in the lead-based paint in the air that create the problem, not the fact that you breathe air where there is lead-based paint. But women of childbearing ages and small children are at susceptible risk and should never sand down a house that was built before 1978. And in any scenario, a painter that repaints that house should wear a mask, okay? We don't get the report because we all know there's lead-based paint there, and if we get the report, then we have to give it to somebody else. If you look hard enough in a house built before 78, you could find lead-based paint, if you look hard enough. If you just look a little bit, you may not find it. If you go to Walmart and buy one of the little tests and check something, it's not in the wall. It didn't even have sheetrock in 1978, so that's not where the problem is. It's in the woodwork that they've covered up with other coats of paint. So we want to be careful about what we say. If lead-based paint is a particular concern to you, you need to not buy a house that was built before 78. You should buy a newer house because there's no scenario that there's not some lead-based paint. And here's the concern that you should search before you go to look at a house. And don't feel good if they say they have no report or they did a report and they didn't find it. They could have gone to Home Depot and bought a deal. I'm telling you, if you look hard enough, you will find lead-based paint. There's no way that you couldn't find lead-based paint. It's just how hard you're going to look for it.
What about now with the new deed restrictions in the historical area where you have a property, a craftsman renovated and then the new part of the house?
Mm-hmm.
It's considered a new home. Would that craftsman part of the house
Absolutely.
probably still so? Would the should you mark as an agent?
Yes.
I would put that.
You would mark that it was built, and you would put that it was built before 1978, and that they would have the option to do a lead-based paint assessment if they'd like. Now, it's been covered up. I don't think there's any. I personally don't think they should just make their own determination. If they want total guarantees, they should buy something brand new. But let's be clear, at the brand new house on Columbia, there's going to be lead-based paint in the soil. They sanded down the other house over the 75 years. There's no way they scraped off 3.5 feet of dirt that if you searched in the flower bed, you wouldn't find the lead-based paint.
Well, wouldn't that hold true for
Almost anywhere that's not in a brand new subdivision in the Katy Prairie. Yes. Any old historical neighborhood, any house built in the 50s or 60s, even if it's a brick house, is bound to have some form of lead-based paint. There was only lead-based, the exterior, the soffit was painted with lead-based paint in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And they still had the paint in 78, and we weren't done with it. It was in the garage, and they kept up the house in 1985 with that same lead-based paint, right? Just because they stopped selling it at home at Sherman-Williams didn't mean that the people weren't still touching up the house with the paint with lead in it.
So are you saying that
if you're concerned about lead-based paint, if you're a woman with breathing problems, or you're a woman that wants to have small children, or you're worried about your small children chewing on a baseboard, you should avoid a house that's built before 1978. Or you should at least make yourself aware of the inherent danger. And there are plenty of studies, and some people are concerned about autism and other issues that could result from a ranch-style house built in 1945 where they chew on the door.
Even if that craftsman were torn down and a new structure was rebuilt?
I would tell you that I think if you tested the soil, you would. So if you're a gardener and you're over there planting your tomatoes and the soil that had lead-based paint, if that concerns you, you need to be aware of it. Just full disclosure.
Just for safety.
The overwhelming majority of people live in houses that have some remnant of lead-based paint. In this neighborhood, and in Montrose, and in Meyerland, and in Grace Heights, and in Oak Forest. Yeah, I mean, that's so. But I sure as hell wouldn't go over there and sand down my baseboard or my old wooden door if I had a uterus.
Was that wishful?
I thought you said breathing problem.
Breathing.
So,
Okay, yes.
You know, the Sashback claims that this neighborhood was too poor to have one.
That's what you told me.
That's a side note.
Yes.
Say that one way, say that again.
So the seller's disclosure, my seller is going to check box BB,
Yep.
B1B, and 2B.
Yep.
Can I go ahead and check the other boxes for the buyer when I put this on the MLS so that they know what we will accept? Because
Only if you
we
email
this
this.
within 10 days, and then we start arguing on this.
Wait, I'm lost.
Yes, the seller's going to check 1B and 2B. When you make an offer, you can check for the buyer and hand them the pamphlet and give them 10 days to go do their assessment, which they could have done in their auction period anyway. Where that will get you in trouble is if you check that they waived and they don't have an auction period, we can get in trouble. So I don't think you really want to do that.
So they can test in their option period?
Absolutely, they can.
Then they could give the seller the report?
Yes, they can. Absolutely.
But then they have, if you only have 10 days in your option, if they do test, they've got 14 days.
So how are they testing the paint?
They're going and they're testing the wood-based enamel. It's not going to be in the sheet.
So they're going to pull the paint off of?
No, they're going to inject a little pin they're going to do a void sample. And they're going to go take the soil and they're going to send it off to a lab. Especially if it's that wooden bungalow, they left the 117 siding, they added that new addition, we sanded off all that dirt, it went all up in the hair, and it fell down onto the ground. You know that has lead-based paint in it.
So the seller is always at risk to having to change their answers in section B.
If they have a report, if they get a report.
If they go under contract.
Yes, they are. Yes, they're subject to someone getting a report and handing it to them. So the key is that, so let's be proactive. Put the pamphlets out at your open house, and if you have Miffy and Biffy over here, the 28-year-old, yuppies, and that's a concern to her buying a house, she shouldn't buy a house in the Heights.
It's not her, it's her parents that they raised her in the lead-based.
They sure did.
And then
they had lead-based blood in their
know
lines
everything
that
about
she
my
chewed on, but we don't have those lines.
Yeah, it's the millennial parents.
Yeah.
Know everything about
Okay.
my house.
We talked enough about that. So when I do a listing deal, I do take a copy of a contract. If it's a 1-to-4 residential house, I take the 1-to-4 house. If it's a condo, I take the condo deal. I take some townhouse, whatever. Because I think you want to explain something to the sellers about how it works. And so when I do mine, look, this listing agreement is between the brokerage firm and yourself. We're using a promulgated form, but it's really kind of loosey-goosey, and we can modify that all if you'd like. If there's something you want to change, and it's normal, my broker allows us to change those things just fine. Once you enter into an agreement, a residential sales contract, now you've entered into a legal and binding document that I no longer have the ability to give you any advice on other than what's normal and customary in our scenarios. These contracts favor the buyers in almost every scenario. Unless the buyer's committing fraud, then the buyer is going to be able to get out of these contracts. But a seller has a much higher level of scrutiny in our court system and can be held liable for not only selling a house, but performing. And the courts have determined that the cost of that can be 3 times the value of the sales price of a house. So you get under contract for $1 million, and for some reason you don't want to sell this house, you are subject to a $3 million lien against you. Okay? I'm not saying that automatically happens, but that's the recourse to a seller, and the recourse to the buyer is never going to be greater than the earnest money. In almost every scenario, you're going to want the buyer to go away, which frees up the property for us to sell to somebody else. You can't make a buyer buy a house, but you can make a seller sell a house. And let's just think that through. In our scenario, you get under contract for $1 million and someone offers you $1.1 million, you'd always be terminating the buyer and taking the higher offer, right? But our system doesn't allow for that. It doesn't allow you the right to terminate a contract. It gives the buyer, in fact, not only an unrestricted right to terminate the contract, but he has a right to terminate if for any reason you failed to disclose something that should have been disclosed, or that you didn't perform as you were required to do, including keeping the utilities on throughout the entire process, all of the utilities, and to maintain the house in its current status, and to perform the repairs with licensed salespeople pulling all permits that would be applicable for those repairs. And that's the kind of information you need to know before you get under contract. And that's what I'm going to help you do, is advise you along the way. But I just want to be clear, you must know that information as you get under contract. And I go over that in my listing agreement with them. So I take the little sections of that matter most, and I highlight them to them about their responsibilities for the utilities and for how the repairs work, and the buyer's unrestricted right to terminate, and the fact that as is doesn't mean as is. It means they didn't initially ask for anything, but they have the unrestricted right to ask for anything that they want, or they can terminate. You're not obligated to do any of those repairs, but they also can terminate, and you now must disclose the inspections and the estimate that they've given us. So let's be clear, we don't want to enter into any agreement without you having full knowledge of how the system can work. Tell them right up front. So I would take a copy of whatever contract you're going to use for the purchase and highlight those items. Now, when we go over on the January 5th, we're going to go over thoroughly how you're going to go over a contract to a buyer and how you're going to go over the seller before they sign it. I just want to, even in a listing agreement, I want to go over these sections with them so that they start down a path of what their responsibilities are going to be along the process. This is just a normal 1-to-4 contract that we use about 95% of the time.
What page are you on?
I am on page 4. I'm sorry, yeah, page 4. I highlighted the items, and the unrestricted right to terminate on page 8. I highlight those little deals and put them in the little packet with them, so that they fully are aware of access, inspections, and utilities, acceptance of property, what as is mean, and the completion of the repairs and treatments. Highlight them in yellow and put them in there, and then how the option period works. They haven't sold a house in Texas, they may not know how it works, so they need to understand the buyer has the unrestricted right to terminate during these days. I don't want to get too bogged down on the others, but I think those would be pretty relative things of which, if I was trying to determine one listing agent from another, and they had gone over these items, and Martha Turner used their little flip book of their comps, might be interesting to know this sort of information. They want to know that you're going to shepherd them through the process. Not only, they think we're marketing people. We don't need to be marketing people as much as we need to be knowledgeable experts on the process and the expectations along the way, setting reasonable expectations. Okay, so I would put those in my listing packet. I would put this new form about how buyers and the lender, the property itself, must meet some expectation, because we just lay the groundwork of our 3 little scenarios of how this is going to work. And just put this in my listing packet.
Did you just say the right to terminate?
Yes. On lender's appraisal, because the importance of pricing, this is going to help you price the house right. It's going to set a reasonable expectation about whether or not we're going to, how we're going to handle appraisal issues if you're pushing the envelope along the way. We don't get to determine the appraiser these days. Barney Frank God. Okay. On the temporary leases, whether it's the seller's temporary lease or the buyer's temporary lease, I think we haven't reviewed these in a while. So the seller's temporary lease is certainly not uncommon, and I'm a huge fan of sellers not leaving until they get their money, because I think it's a lot of stress in my world to move out of a house, move someplace else, rent another place, put down a deposit, and sign a lease, and all of a sudden the buyer doesn't close because they lost a job or there was something that came up at the end. The sellers had a lot of risk over here, right? They've now contracted, they're paying $3,000 a month for a rental they don't want to have. They've moved, their house looks like shit. We see all these holes in the wall everywhere. Remember, it's a little harder. So I'm a huge fan of it. Sellers closing, getting their money, and leasing later. Not everyone loves that idea. I'm still a huge fan of it. But I do tell you that what gets us all the time is the expectation of property condition and the amount of some deposit that we're agreeing to. So we usually can agree to either 2 or 3 days of free rent is normal and customary in the world. Beyond 2 or 3 days, PITI is normal and customary. You can negotiate anything. It's fairly normal. It was fairly standard in our world, and it's all standard in 2008, 9, 10, and 11, to close, hang out, and, get 2 days for rent free and then go. But it's all negotiable. People can charge whatever they want. Remember, it's a lot harder to negotiate when you need to do something because the close date's extending because the seller has a problem. Seller can't get into their new place. Now the seller needs to rent back. So then they can charge you $1,000 a day here, right? They could. What choice are you going to have? Pay $10,000 and have your mover sit in the moving van, and you're going to go rent at the Hyatt Regency over here. Those are your options. So, it's easier to negotiate this sort of stuff up front when you do some close date. But I think I would be clear about this deposit, how much money you're willing to put up. I would have the assumption I'm going to lose the deposit, okay? Because it's the number one thing we fight on over here. Someone moves out, they're going to keep the deposit. They have 30 days to give it back. There's nothing that says they're going to hand it right back to you. Nice people just never deposit and hand it right back to you if it's 2 or 3 days. But not everyone's nice. So you're preparing and planning for not nice people. Yes?
Okay, so because you haven't done the walkthrough, you don't know that under the carpet is the big stain.
Well, they should have disclosed it. The seller knew.
Okay, so
the seller knew.
So
that's
when
what
you
the seller's
find
going
out that the deposit's not going to take that, can you then?
They were fraudulent to say that the air conditioner was set at 75, but really, you can't modify your odometer on your car. You can't not disclose things, or you're going to be liable.
Okay, they're liable, but what is the?
You're going to sue them. You're going to sue them. But yeah, if they hang out there and they have a deposit, they're going to keep the deposit. But yeah, people know if they have a chip in their bathtub. They know it. So if they sell their house and they put a bunch of toys in the bathtub and they don't show the chip, they knew they had a chip. Come on now, that's unethical. They knew they had a chip. Nobody has a bathtub. They clean their bathtub at least once a month. They know if they have a chip or not. They know if the dog peed underneath the carpet and they covered the dog pee with a rug. They know. And so when you move that deal, you've told the world that you hid something. When you hide dog pee under a rug, the assumption is that you've hid a lot worse, right? So you've created a whole environment that's hostile. That's why people get sued. For good reason, I think. So you need to know how these sort of things work.
How do you handle, okay, we gave them till the end of May free because he was living free. Okay. How do you handle a walkthrough?
You walk through, you're going to walk through before closing and make sure a tree
No,
didn't fall
it's
on.
already closed.
You're going to do
And
it.
then we've done this long temporary lease.
You're going to walk, when they leave, you're going to do another walkthrough. I don't know what your deposit was, but let's say that they had, let's say you were at the Archstone Apartments and you left and you had $1,000 deposit and you had $5,000 worth of damage. They're going to send you a little letter and say, send me my fourth of the damage that you created. If not, I'm going to go file it on your credit report and I'm going to go submit it to the justice of peace over here. That's what you're going to do about it. That's not all you can do. So same thing. So on the walkthrough, I think we want the buyers to have the right to, if you represent the buyer or you represent the seller, you need the buyers to have the right to walk through a house and tell us what they like or don't like about it. They don't have to sign, I can't make them sign the form. I can make our buyer, but I can not close the house. The seller shouldn't close the house if they know the buyer has an issue. So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, do you have an issue? We've given you the opportunity. We've encouraged you. We've requested you to go and do this walkthrough because we would rather have conflict resolution before all the money exchanges hands than afterwards. So if I'm the seller, I want a buyer to go through here, and I want them to either sign the form or tell me what their problem is. So we make the firm tell us, I can require them to say, I had the opportunity to walk through and I chose not to walk through. I had the opportunity to walk through and I see no issue, and if they just won't, we're going to document thoroughly that they had every opportunity to describe any issue that was wrong with their house, their expectation, their repairs. We're going to document it and put it in the file and say, look, you can't come back to me a month later and say there was dog pee on the floor. You should have told me before you bought a house. And this is how the judge goes. You gave them $1 million knowing there was dog pee and you didn't do anything about it? Sorry, that's how that's going to work. It's going to play out just fine over here. Now, if you knew there was dog pee and you wanted $10,000, you had an obligation to tell them in a reasonable time frame. And there again, that's before you give them the $1 million. So in every scenario, we need to know, do you have an issue with this or not? And why wouldn't you want to tell us? You're not waiving any right to anything. If the carpet's covering dog pee and you don't find out until 3 days later, that's not what this says. You didn't know that. You still have the right to go back to people whether you sign this form or not. And I want to know that you had the opportunity. Did any agent keep you from walking through the house? Yes or no? Did you inspect the house? Did you inspect your repair? If you didn't inspect your repairs, who are you relying on? Are you relying on your agent? Who are you relying on? Because we're encouraging you to have conflict resolution before you buy $1 million house or a $100,000 house. That's what that says. On this new listing, we've added these exclusions because we're going to make it real clear what we're excluding over here. This is the little new listing checklist that you're turning in to provide the information to the firm. I don't know the difference between that one and this one.
Oh, good.
This one as well.
That's, okay.
We just updated it. Okay, how's my packet coming along? Oh, did you give me mine back? What time is it? 12:17. How y'all doing today? Good? Okay, yes? That's perfectly fine. You get paid to handle that. Now remember, on my listing appointment, I'm not going on the average listing appointment. I understand that from the very beginning because I'm not meeting people that I don't have some relationship with. So you're meeting people that you met at an open house, you just met them the day before, and now they ask you to come on Wednesday to their house. I would drop off a listing packet before I went to a meeting. I would give them the opportunity. So someone calls us, they call Brandon and they say, Mr. listing my house, or you sold my mother's house, I want you to come over, or whatever. I would take a packet and I would take them, and you should never get a listing. I think we should just take your listing away from you because you got to be able to sell your point. So you got to give them something about you. Okay, because they're going to buy you and me. That's why they're listing. So get with Aaron and get something about yourself. I'm a former teacher. I love kids. I'm good with kids. Whatever. I don't care. You need a little piece of paper like this and put it here in the beginning. So this is kind of your side and you, and this is why they should list with Boulevard Realty. And I would put it in this format. Why would you want to list with it? And I would put both. Why you would want to use this as a buyer's agent, why you would want to use this as a seller's agent. This is why we're going to earn this 3%. This is how we're going to earn this 3%. We're not going to do it for 5% because this 3% is being paid for by the seller and this 3% is being paid for, for representing the buyer. Here's why you would choose Boulevard Realty. Here's our listing of what it is that we're going to go do. Here's who we are and why you want to do business with us. Here's how we're going to promote you throughout the world. Here's your options for listing packets. Here's the dangers of overpricing, selling time. That's what's up. Here's the little reading material about the firm and what we're doing. Here's the team of people that are going to be working on their listing. Here's a reemphasis of who we are and what all they're getting. Here's our status of where their house is in relationship. Now, if you're in Galveston, this looks different. Or if you're in Cinco Ranch, it looks different. These are we can help you with design. Here's our commitment to the future. Here's how we answer the phone 24 hours, and you'd be surprised the number of people that test this on Sunday morning at 6:30 at night. Almost everyone tests this. They're listing people, and then they call Greenwood King, or they call Boulevard Realty. We'll challenge any one of those firms. We will challenge them. We will either answer their phone or call them back much quicker than anyone else. We will call them back at 6:30 at night or at 9:30 at night. We will talk to them. It is frustrating as hell to sell a house and call a firm at 5:01 p.m. on Saturday or Sunday and they not call you back until the following day. That's the number one reason you should probably go list with us versus Greenwood King. Because the average person is still out looking at houses at 5:01 and they want someone to answer their phone. And they want that agent to know, to be able to take the call, not the person sitting at the property desk or someone who's never been to the house. This is the basic sort of thing. Now, what I take myself is their previous listing page and their tax record, and I put it in the middle of this sort of deal. And I'm just going to use that for reference. Tax record says you have 3,400 square feet. Your old MLS said 36. Do you know how many? I'm just looking for changes. I'm looking. The names often aren't right. The square footage of land often isn't right. They have a general idea. Every person has a general idea of their value based on their taxable value. They either think it's worth more or less than that, right? So it's not good. So I would just, that's what everyone else is going to look at. If their taxable value is $600,000 and they think it's worth $900,000, how are they going to justify it and how am I going to justify it? Because that's where we're at in reality. But I have one, I have Nick and Kathy Coon, they're thinking about selling, and their taxable value is $1,750,000. I don't think I can get that. They should have protested their taxes. I don't know that I can sell a house for over $400 a foot across from the parking lot at Buchanan. I think that value is not a reasonable value, and they need to understand that that's not a realistic price. They're over. So taxable value can be too low or it can be too high. I would put that information in there at a minimum, and I would drop this off in advance. Okay. Then and when I have a copy of a little contract based on whatever contract that is, and maybe highlight those sort of things and put that in the back there also. Any other sort of topical information can be great. You can get too much information at the same time. They're only going to read the front page or two. That's all they're going to read. The rest of the stuff is just to make you look valid in the marketplace. It's just like the books. Most people just read the cliff notes or watch the movie. They didn't read Old Man and the Sea or watch the movie. But they can at least keep the Old Man and the Sea book on their bookcase. We know that, right? I didn't know because you can't possibly. No, I think it's. I wouldn't remotely do that. I wouldn't remotely do that.
Until you see.
I would go through the house. I would meet them. I would try my best on the first meeting. What I'm really trying to do is spark a connection with these people. I would sit and visit with them for a few minutes. I'd ask to go on a tour. I would talk to them about the state of the market while walking. I would have them point out any exclusion. I would ask them the questions about the TVs and the draperies and the mirrors in the bathrooms and any potted plants and the planters and the porch swing and the Mark has one, and they have the most beautiful back patio and got some sail thing over there to block the sun and furniture that fits perfect for that back patio. Everyone on earth is going to want that furniture. There is no scenario that it will ever look that nice. They're architects. They designed that thing around that furniture. So I know everyone's going to want that furniture. So that furniture is $10,000, and we price the house at X. You know they're going to ask for the furniture. So let's talk about the furniture. And they're going to be offended. They're not going to want to give you $10,000 for $10,000 worth of furniture you paid 4 years ago. They don't think it's worth $10,000. They barely want to pay $1,000. They want it for free. Where the hell are you going to do? And you're going to ship it back off to Venezuela or Argentina or wherever it is you're going. let's talk about that scenario early on, and let's just add the price of that furniture into the house, just knowing full well. And I think that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a bit of advice. In every house I go to, in every discipline, I talk about the two major phenomenons that I have learned in 21 years of experience. And it's that no one wants the brown palette anymore. They don't want brown granite, they don't want brown travertine, they don't want that look, they don't want a project. The average buyer today has more money than they have time. Whatever talent they have, they're going to use it to make money. They're not going to want to wait on a granite guy. They're thoroughly convinced they can't get a granite guy there. If they get him there to give you an estimate, he's never going to finish the job. To get him back is going to be, it's easier to pay $100,000 more, which is basically $100 a month more on the mortgage, to not put up with the frustration of having to take off and meet the granite guy, who's never going to finish the job in the first place. And everyone has this herd-like mentality. There's safety in numbers. They would rather be in a bidding war, and they want the exact same house that everyone else wants. Nobody wants the outlier. So you don't want to be the outlier. You don't want to overprice yourself and be on the market 120 days, because no one wants to buy that house. You're going to be forced to pull it off the market and do something significantly different and put it back and make it new and fresh. That's what they want in a TV show. That's what they want in music. They don't listen to the same music for the whole year. They listen to the new song this month. And next month they know they're going to get a new song. It's the mindset of the buyers. I don't have to agree or disagree with it. I just have to explain to you how the marketplace works. And I think, and I can have that little talk while we're walking around in the house or standing in the kitchen. And then we sit back down and I think you trying to establish, let's talk about your scenario and what you're doing. And they'll share some insight, and you're going to say, how are we going to sell this in the marketplace? If you're leaving, there's these people that feel like you have this desperate nature that you're going to have to sell the house or whatever. So how are we going to be able to come back to that? You're going to say, I didn't run any preliminary numbers, but I have a general idea what your house is worth now. Houses, our industry is notorious, and the real estate industry is notorious for looking backwards. It wants to take what sold 3 months ago or what 6 months ago and determine the value of your house. And we based our issue on these comps. But we can take the price of oil, and I can tell you what it was March 1, and I can tell you what it was April 1, and I can tell you what it is today. And if I multiply all those deals, I would tell you I would come up with an average of $51 for oil, but it's going to trade at 73 today. And if I want to buy any oil today, I either have to pay $73 or I have to wait for it to lower. And if I'm a buyer, do I want to buy when prices are going down, or do I want to buy when prices are going up? The goal of the realtor today is to convince people not only are you buying at today's value, but the future value is going to be worth more. I can't guarantee that, but by knowing more what's going on in the neighborhoods and the schools and the crime and the retail and the sidewalks and the city and the tourism, I'm able to sell the future value of your home, which better justifies pushing the value of your house beyond what it was based on a comp 3 or 4 months ago. If you're in a multi-family condominium unit, they're all the same. I think that works fairly well. I think that's what's artificially kept the value of the suburbs down, because David Weekley's Plan 3602 is for sale around the corner, and it never allows them to have any great appreciation of value. My job is to know why your house in the 800 block of Harvard is worth more than the 800 block of Herkimer. Why your house in a historic district might be worth more than one outside of a historic district, or why one outside of a district might be worth more than one inside, depending on the house. And how the different schools impact what someone is willing to pay or what they're willing to work for. I can have the exact same house in the 800 block of Harvard and on Aurora, and the one on Harvard will sell 10 times faster for more money than the house on Aurora. It's called supply and demand. And they will only buy the one on Aurora when they can no longer find what they want and the price point that they want on Harvard. And it's value perception. That's really what's on. We're not finding buyers' houses today. They know more about the house than I do. They're going to Facebook you. They're going to LinkedIn you. They're gonna check and see if you paid your taxes. They're gonna run every social media about you. That's what the buyers do today. Isn't that what you would do if you were gonna buy a house? So I'm gonna sell not only the attributes of your home, but the attributes of your neighborhood. And there's no one better suited to do that because I have 70 coworkers who've been working for 20 years in your neighborhood trying to make it a better place to live. And we're going to use the strength of our firm to go and sell your house, and we're going to be able to pull some. And we sell houses on Herkimer. You know how we do it? We pull the guy from Harvard who's beating his head on Harvard for what he costs on Harvard, and we take him to Herkimer. And we have a better idea of who's making appointments on Harvard, and we're calling that agent from Cinco Ranch and saying, I know you might not know where Herkimer is, but it's really just as close to Portofino as is the one on Harvard. And you're walkable to all these things at Donovan Park and Heights Mercantile and the hike and bike trail than you are over here in this block, but it costs $100,000 less. And do you know about the bond money that was just passed for Love Elementary? And while it's not land like Harvard, which is on 8 acres. This one has 30 acres, and there's more room for opportunity and future growth in this area than there is in this area. You play up the advantages that you have. You're just going to talk to them about that and get a feel for who they are and get a feel for where, you have a perception of what you think your house is worth, and you're going to need to see if it's in reality of what the market thinks that it's worth, and then we can figure it works well for both parties. What I like to do is go back to my office, not only go and comp myself, but visit with other people in my office. But I will base more of my opinion of value on what is currently on the market and what they're going to get and what I think is going to future be on the market. But let's discuss the state of the market in the Heights. My average buyer wants to buy a house, and houses are in the best light when Onion Creek is in its best light. When people are sitting at 8 Row Flint and they're out on the jogging trail and they're walking their dog and they're running along the bayou and they're sitting outdoor, everyone loves these neighborhoods. When it's 110 degrees outside and it's hot as hell and the yards are brown, the people go on vacation. They go to the Hamptons and they go to Martha's Vineyard and they go to Europe and they go to Aspen and they go to Colorado and they go to California. And the agents do also. So there's less buyers and there's less agents in the month of August. And there's a fair amount of incentive to buy a house for tax purposes in a certain calendar year. So my slowest months are January and August. And I'm going to take more time off in January and August because I have to work 46 weeks straight the other time or whatever. So timing of your house is just as important as the pricing of your house. So you want to time it just right and you want to price it just right to maximize. The market will tell you, and I will show you back when we meet again, the number of houses that had multiple offers and took higher, and then the number of houses that sat on the market, and the ones that sat on the market on an average of 60 to 90 days, what percentage they really get at the end versus what they really got. So you can't combine the two and say the average days are 60 days. In my market, the average day is 15 or 150. And to imply that it's in the middle is not realistic. It's one of these two scenarios. Which one do you want to play in or not? If you don't care about whether you sell your house and you don't care if it sits on the market for a long time and you want to try a price that's the most aggressive on earth, you're probably going to be over here. It's not likely that you do that unless you significantly do something different. And I think you have to do something different. If your house doesn't sell in 30 days, there's a reason it hasn't sold. Maybe you picked the wrong time. Don't list on August. If you're relocating, and don't make me list your house August 1. We need to go try. Don't make me list a house on a holiday weekend when agents are gone. I'm not going to list your house July 1 when everyone's going to be gone the July 4th weekend. I'm going to wait until you're better off to list July 10th. I'm not going to list the Saturday before Memorial Day weekend. I'm going to wait and get further along there. So I'm going to use my expertise to help guide you for the best advice of timing and pricing and a strategy on how we're going to market your house. We're going to talk about that. That's kind of the scenario that you're going to talk in the first go round.
Staging.
A firm believer that I don't want to see people furniture in a house. I want to see the house for the house. But I do know that staging works in a number of scenarios. I prefer, this is my personal opinion, I prefer to start a house without the staging and see what the comments are, unless I know there's a fatal flaw. if I have this townhouse scenario and it's a kitchen and a dining room and a living room and there's really no real dining room, I need to show how to use the dining room. You know, if I have a big game room and nobody knows what to do with the game room, I'm going to need to show them how to use the game room. So I think staging works, but I would think I would want to start with a blank slate than I would be to start with stage, unless we have a bunch of things we're trying to cover up. We have a white canister, white bread box, and a white cutting board, and I'm going to go make it look as white as I can to cover up your brown if we don't have any other ability to cover up your brown. So I think I would just use our judgment of what I think is best. But I think, as I mentioned before, if we started with no staging, and if we were at it 3 or 4 weeks, we would get some comments, we would need to fix that, or we would need to do something different. I would stage it the second time.
Who pays for staging?
Depends on the scenario and what we're staging. I mean, typically, staging is a seller's expense. We have some things that we can help, and it depends on the scenario of how it works. There are people in real estate that are good at staging. We're good at selling houses. Our specialty is not staging. And so we're not going to necessarily go into staging unless we feel like that's in your best interest. But our primary interest is in selling your house. So let us first figure out what's best to sell the house. If staging is by far the best thing, and we can make more money by staging and you make more money, well, then I think it's fundamentally fair for the seller to make staging. If we can help accentuate something, I will tell you, we did some stuff in 18, 16, and the seller didn't care what the seller said. The seller wasn't buying the house. It was selling to somebody else. So I think staging works when you have a fatal flaw. I don't think it necessarily works all the time, and I think it's just a trend. I think many people are very intimidated by houses that look too perfect. I really think they do. I think they are convinced it will never look that good again. So I don't want that one. I want something else. I can't wear size 29 jeans, skinny jeans, just don't look good on me. So some models wearing skinny jeans aren't going to be a selling point for me. I don't care what those models wear. I want it to look realistic. So I think it's the same here. I'm not saying, I do think it's a trend and I think a lot of sellers like it. I think a lot of realtors depend on it to solve the problem, and that was never really the problem. There are plenty of houses that are staged that were sold just fine without the staging. And all that happened was somebody paid $60,000 to $80,000. Didn't really matter. But I think I would reevaluate when staging the most appropriate.
I feel a lot of buyers have no imagination. So if you got
I'm a better fan of vertical staging and things, but and I am a fan of spatial identity. To show a room that's too big, how it can be used. To show a room that's too small, how it can be used. I think we have to take these small bedrooms and make them into workout rooms, or make them into studies, or make sure that the bed is smaller. And I think sometimes you got to buy the West End furniture, which is for smaller people, or the gallery furniture, which is for the bigger people. But I think it's deceiving to put a small couch in a room and make it look bigger when everyone has a bigger couch, and they're not going to fit in a small couch, and they're never going to buy a small couch, and they don't want IKEA furniture. They want something else. So, but we represent the seller, the seller's best interest. I think what's better is that thing's willing to pay for that for themselves. So let's bring Maria over there and there are plenty of designers that will give them their look. I got a partner with amazing taste. Doesn't mean that it's not amazing, right? But it shifts your mind, right? So I mean, how his house look is not how our house is going to look. So you have to be careful about it. And I think it's a valid question.
But then, okay, so you're selling a house that looks like grandma lives there, and
so I can go and sell it.
But
So
in that case, we need to move the furniture out and move something else in.
I would tell them the exact same thing I told Lindsay Lee, not sell your house for $800,000. I cannot sell it. It's black 4x4 tiles, an orange faux finish, a bunch of shit everywhere. I can't sell that, and I can't sell it at any price. So I convinced them to spend $200,000. We put it back on the market for $1.2 million. They made an extra $200,000 immediately. I showed my seller how to make $200,000. So I showed that same seller, your house in this condition, I'm going to sell for $400,000. If we can find some way to spend $20,000, I can get $450,000. Would you spend $20,000 to make $1,000 and sell your house 2 years earlier? If you can't afford it, then can I look at a painter who might do the work, put a lien on the house, and get closing? Can I look at some other scenario of how that might work? Can we be creative and think outside the box to maximize how it's going to work?
In this case, it wasn't the house, it was the furniture.
Get the furniture out of there. You're going to have to move anyway. They can't see your house for grandma's furniture. Worked lovely for you, the buyer of this house. Not in the house. Does have taste like Restoration Hardware, West Elm, Pottery Barn. That's who the buyer is today in almost every area. And while there may be an outlier, I still think there's safety in numbers.
And that's where like staging can help edit, you know.
I would bring the Marias of the world, and it's not kind of thing. I want you to go through this house, and I want you to remove everything that you find is unnecessary. And I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to remove 10 more things in every room. One thing is enough. Not 5, not 3, 1. Have one thing on a countertop, one thing on a fireplace, and one thing on a dresser. Do not have 3 things. No flowers, no feathers, no roosters. I mean, I painfully. So I sold Jim Teeter's ex-wife's house or whatever. I'm standing like the fucking pigs and roosters were everywhere. They were on the back. There is no scenario you could sell that. So and she had 3 very good friends. I mean, I was brutally honest. And I made her go through the yellow wall and the red wall and the green wall and the flowery shit from the 1980s, Mary Engelbright stuff. Like, you can't tell. And her kids and everyone loved what she did. They've been telling her for years. She needed someone to be that painfully honest with her. And we exactly the same here. We put it out there. There were no real confidence. We sold it immediately. We had plenty of people interested. It was a blank slate. Y'all want to go shopping at Sears or Saks Fifth Avenue? Where do you want to go? What website do you want to go to? It's the same scenario. It's 2018, for God's sake. This is how it works. Be brutally honest. They'll appreciate it. They'll be more.
So mine isn't so much on staging. I've got this townhome that everyone's common for. It needs too many repairs. I've got a seller who says I paid X amount 4 years ago.
That has not, if you got it for $1, it wouldn't make any difference. And or if you paid $1 million, but one paid for it. If you bought Enron stock, it's worthless, right?
Right.
Okay. So if you bought Yahoo stock, I mean, it's some scenario. What someone paid has nothing to do with work, but you can get so I would continue to get the estimates of the work so that people have a reasonable scenario.
I mean, I've been so many guys out there and they text like, you have a bid for me, you have a bid for me. Oh no, it's too small of a job.
Well, I understand that. That's why nobody else wants to do that. You can't get anybody there. But you're going to have to, in that scenario, get Frank to go help you.
Frank has gone over there, but I need to get with him again. Could we just put it on the market if I can convince her to reduce the price, which she just won't do?
Well, you can go on Match.com today with pimples all over your face. You're better off just waiting until it clears up before you're going to go on any dates. I just don't think it's going to work. It's not going to work. We're kidding ourselves. And then you lost what names the fuck you had, which was the new listing. So
what's the problem?
it needs a bunch of work. My ex-wife's house, the same thing. She had a bunch of rotten wood in the basement, the fence was falling over, and she had we're just no. We're not going to be able to sell it. You're kidding yourself. We're not going to do that. It's not going to work.
Well,
it's insanity.
We just got an offer again this week, and she's like, well, I don't know. I'm going to have to think about this one. Oh my God, this is a great offer. Seriously, and he would come back and say, I'm going to.
Good, better. How far off for you on that deal?
Listed 349.
It needs how much of work?
Well, we can't get it. I mean, she has a bid to repaint all the wall colors inside, but I don't know about all the rotten siding.
I mean, so,
Yeah.
you tell them as long as you can, and the MLS, and you show them everything that's sold, it's gonna be white, it isn't gonna be red,
Oh,
or
yeah.
green.
This is
You know,
what you're in the market for with,
Which one you buy?
than you are.
Yeah, I'm really, really, really good, but you know, if my car doesn't work and yours does, and I'm selling cars, the one that runs is gonna be the one people choose. They're not gonna choose the one that doesn't work, right? Just be, yep. What else we got? Listing. Any questions on listing information? We've covered a lot of stuff here so far. Any of this valuable? Yes, Amanda?
I've had like a really bad listing that I just, took as one of those, like, I can sell it for you.
That's why you want that listing area to be as little as possible.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, one bad listing will suck the life out of you.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you,
I
it's the same as the bad hair. God beat the shit out of you. You gotta at some point get divorced to find another one. And you're never gonna find one with this one. So you gotta get out of bed over here and free yourself up for something better, or it's just gonna drag you down over here.
Yeah.
One guy's like in the life of you will keep you from having a really good career. Let it go.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, Ron and I were looking at some numbers that, like, when you go out on a listing appointment, and say, look at my sales ratio, well, if you've got one bad one that you weren't able to sell, it's gonna break down the ratio. So I was gonna ask, like, should you maybe terminate it before the agreement is expired? So that,
Yeah,
so that it
look,
just goes away from your record?
You could. I mean, I don't think that record makes much difference as it does just the amount of time and effort and energy that one can be down.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you also, if we come talk about it, you explain that, you say, look, I advised them to do this, they didn't listen to me, they did this instead, I tried the very best that I could, and I couldn't sell it. It's the one that I couldn't sell out of all these others.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to throw the seller under the bus, but I do spend a lot of time trying to put together my information as to how to best market and sell your house. And when there are reasons that somebody may not listen to everything that I have to say, and as much as I try to do it, I couldn't make it work. I don't want that to happen to you.
I had Lynbrook, it's the same thing. I told Lynbrook it was worth $2.6 million. That's what it was worth. They made me list it for 2.9. We got an offer for $1,265,000, 50,000 more than I thought. They wouldn't take it. We play along here but I'm beating I was never going to get any worse than that. Brown threw up all over it. So the same thing. They terminated with me. We had it staged. I let them keep the staging furniture because the world's just a small place. We staged stuff. Yeah, look, works enough for the staging. They ended up listing with Martha Hadger, who's very happy. We let Martha come out, it was all fine. The world's going to play around just fine. You know what they ended up getting? 2.595, 50,000 less than the offer that I bought them 6 months ago. And I can take that to another listing and say, look, these are things that I lost last year. This is what I got. Here's the offer that I had for it. The advantage of, I didn't think I did anything wrong. I guess what I didn't would be firm enough on the price in the beginning. The market would have told me if it was worth 2.9, we would have been in multiple offers and would have not taken it.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, maybe about that. Okay.
One more.
Yes?
What is your opinion on, the survey of your realtor?
A survey?
Well, I'm not a survey.
HAR survey. I think the world likes Yelp, and I think they like Open Table reviews, even though a lot of us don't trust them at all. I would probably say, if I wasn't the most experienced agent on earth, I would use it. If you wanted new clients, see, I don't need an agent rating because I'm not trying to, so I'm not the average person. I'm not trying to get Joe Blow who's looking at the agent rating and choosing an agent that way. I'm only using my own old clients. We're going to give me a great rating anyway, but I don't need that deal. I think if I was trying to grow my business for people and I was willing to take on a buyer or seller I didn't have a relationship, I think that buyer or seller wants to know something about the agent rating.
I was just curious because I've gotten really good ratings except for one back in.
I think anyone that has all perfect isn't real.
And the internet will prove them out on that.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
It's actually the best thing you can have is to not have all perfect.
That's right. I think it's fine, and you explain it just fine. There's no way that a pizza place on earth can't be late with one pizza, right? And the guy who was late is gonna write some review about it. Doesn't mean they don't deliver with 99% efficiency. I mean, it's okay not to look so perfect. Okay. Alrighty, we'll do this again on the buying side very soon, 2 weeks.
Thank you. Right, so
Yep.
throw away yours with the highlight.
You can have it. You can knock it. You can have it all.
This woman is really about James.
Yeah, I'm calling it.